Two, hello, check. Check two. Sibilance. How's it going? It just occurred to me while I was taking a sip of this. It just occurred to me. I don't even know when the last time I had a regular DC. This is a little bit weird for me, actually. I've been getting these for the last couple of months, these Cherry Coke Zeros. I haven't had a regular DC in quite some time. I don't know if there's some shifting allegiances going on in the soda wars. Not to alarm anybody. Some shifting allegiances in the soda wars going on, though. This really is tremendous, though, this Cherry Coke Zero. Hey, Don Dark Sony. That's great. That's really good. That's really satisfying right now. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I just posted a new episode of 49th Parahell podcast. I took my conversation with Camila Escalante from last week. I just released that a few moments ago. It was a fantastic conversation. If you were here for it, it's also got a little intro. Got the 49th Parahell production that you know and love. What I like is about Brandon. He kept all his campaign promises. I got my $600 and my student loans forgiven. Promises made, promises kept. Brandon 2024. I think that's pretty much where we're all probably at, I imagine. I had such low expectations of Brandon, and Brandon somehow managed to go under the expectations. You know? Isn't that amazing? It was a really low bar. And the amazing thing too is that you got this sense, especially early on in the Brandon administration, that they had learned the mistakes of the Obama era and understood that they had to do some stuff in order to not suffer the same kind of fate. It seemed like they at least understood this. I was really I don't know if optimistic is the word, but I really kind of felt like even from just a total cynical, pragmatic viewpoint, they did understand that they would have had to deliver on some big stuff and not get bogged down into the exact same stuff that plagued the Obama administration, trying to chase this conservative approval that was never going to come. And I was really if you look back at the streams from that time, I was really willing to give Brandon the benefit of the doubt a little bit. You know, just not even that I think he's a good guy or anything, but just we have to do some stuff. You know, we have to do some stuff so we don't lose. And it's been worse than what I imagined. It's pretty amazing. All they really all the work had been done for them. That's the amazing thing. They took over. There's this bipartisan effort to pass these new a sort of threadbare social democracy or a welfare state in America that hasn't existed for years because of the pandemic. It just got handed right to them. It got handed right to them. Expanded child tax credit and expanded unemployment benefits. And all this these new programs that were they snapped their fingers and just put them into place. And all they had to do is just keep that. Make that stuff permanent. And Biden would probably be sailing to re-election right now. And maybe he would be getting looked at as some kind of modern day FDR figure. That's literally all they had to do. And they couldn't even do that. They couldn't even do that. They couldn't just keep the stuff and then, obviously there's excuses. Obviously there's the excuses. It was Joe Manchin. If only it wasn't for that Joe Manchin. If it wasn't for that guy, we would have totally kept all that stuff. But unfortunately, even though Joe Brandon was the guy that was supposed to bring everyone together and he was supposed to work with Republicans because he's this decades long Senate guy, conservative basically, That was his whole pitch. He can't even get his own party on board with just keeping in place legislation that like actually helps people and would probably propel them to another generation of popularity. Nope. Oh, the parliamentarian. That darn parliamentarian. It's really something else, honestly, when you think about it like that, isn't it? Like, it's really something else. They had it. They had everything on a platter. I mean, just saying nothing of Obama took, there's the same thing. The whole Obama takes over with this historic mandate and this whole grotesque, corrupt economic system in total free fall. All Obama has to do is take out the scissors and just cut those people loose, give a sacrificial lamb to the public or a couple, and he couldn't even do that. He rescued all the evil demonic financial institutions, brought them all back, let the Republicans up off the mat as well, because it would have been unfair to do anything. When they were, it wouldn't be fair to like enact legislation that they weren't able to say no to. If it wasn't for that Lieberman, It's truly amazing, honestly. It's almost like they're working on the same side as the Republicans and all the ruling class people, just trying to protect their class interests. It kind of seems like that sometimes, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like that? That they're all just kind of working together, and they're doing this big old kayfabe thing, like I hate you. No, I don't like you either. You're a liberal. You're a redneck reactionary, whatever. But then behind the scenes, they're all just like, oh, remember when we were yelling at each other? And remember when people thought that we all were mad at each other? Oh, that was classic. Oh, that was just classic. It is amazing though with Brandon. It's just like they had everything that they needed to be remembered very fondly by, even with all the horror. People would, like we've seen, people would turn a blind eye to the horrors that they're committing right now if they had at least like taken effort to make sure that people could still be like economically comfortable. But they couldn't even do that. They could not even do that. I think there are some genuine beefs too, Kijiji Genie, but I think ultimately everyone knows what team they're playing for. Just like in wrestling, right? Just there's Brett and Sean. They fucking hated each other. You know, they're working together to put one over on the audience and the pay-per-view buyers. They still didn't like each other, but they were working together though on all the marks. And we get to do the orange man bad shit in 2024. It's just like 2016, only no Hillary. Still with her. Hopefully we will still get Hillary. I'm still holding out hope for that. Yeah, and now they're in this dilemma as well with this court case that just passed against Trump last night about keeping him off the ballot, which now I guess is going to go to the Supreme Court. And it's interesting too, because like they're like liberals have painted themselves into a corner here where they have so much respect for these institutions. Excuse me, I'm just like slamming back that Coke there. They've painted themselves into a corner where the most popular candidate in the coming election is now possibly going to not be able to run because he legally tried to do an insurrection. And like, regardless of what you think about Trump or what you think about January 6th, and I agree. Like we all watched it. Trump did try to incite some kind of insurrection. It was stupid and it was very half-assed. And the whole thing was probably an intelligence community honeypot for Trump himself and his most deranged followers. Nevertheless, though, regardless of all that, like, excess information there, they still did try to do an insurrection. But now liberals have kind of painted themselves into a corner, because it's like the most popular candidate, whether you think it's stupid or not, and it was stupid. It was stupid. But there's something kind of inherently anti-democratic when the most popular candidate that's running is not able to run because of these legal consequences. Like, regardless of what he tried to do, he still has a huge amount of popularity and a big constituency that wants to vote for him and wants him to run. Like, there's, you know what I mean? There's something kind of anti-democratic about that, regardless of any of the legal consequences. So now liberals are in this bind where it's like we have to continue to support this like legal challenge to his actual candidacy, but we have to kind of like also undermine these values about our democracy, or our Western democracy, that we claim to care about. Oh, it was very funny. I mean, I think maybe if like some of these yahoos had wound up like stringing up Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence in front of the Capitol building, and it had resulted in some kind of like far right putsch or whatever, I don't think that would have been like a good thing, but it was funny. I mean, it's undeniably funny. It was undeniably funny. A bunch of small HVAC business owners in real tree getting pepper sprayed. That was good. That was good stuff. That's why the GOP stacked the Supreme Court. This Colorado ruling is going to be overturned. It would be very funny if Trump got betrayed by like Gorsuch and the people that he put in there, because the conservative establishment doesn't really like him either. You know, the ruling class, like Trump he was good for business economically, but the ruling class obviously didn't like Trump. They don't consider Trump to be one of them. Trump and Nixon is a really interesting comparison in American presidents, aren't they? Because they're doing the work for the ruling class, but they're not really part of that. They are in terms of like their economic status, but they're not really allowed into the same club, you know? So we could see even the conservative Supreme Court that Trump helped put in place could stab him in the back. You know? Because ultimately their bosses are the ruling class. And these people might come to the conclusion that Trump is bad for business. Even if he's good for business, money business, he's bad overall with his, like, you know, saying the quiet part out loud thing, kind of telling everybody, letting people in on the scam, you know, making it so obvious, making the grift and the kayfabe so obvious to everybody. The clown show's got to be exhausted. Great for ratings, though. This way they could also have ratings without actually having Trump with any power. They should probably just put Trump on TV. Just give him a TV show. He's probably going to be happy with that. Anyway, so who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, one who reads, I agree. I don't think a bunch of like Trump obsessed weirdos who want America to be even more fascist than it is currently, had it succeeded. I agree. That would not be funny or bad. I think it's hard not to laugh at just the absurdity of it, like the farce of it. But I was never one to like discount the seriousness of it. Like I thought on that day and continued to think that it was a serious thing. And the whole thing shouldn't just be laughed off or hand waved away. I think it's impossible just not to like chuckle at the total ridiculousness of it, though. But I totally hear what you're saying as well. I don't think it would have been a good thing had this actually managed to succeed. But it's amazing though, isn't it? I just have no idea. I really have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know who the Republican candidate's going to be. I don't know who the Democratic candidate's going to be. I'm strongly in the camp that I don't think it's going to be Biden, as I've talked about. And no matter what happens with Trump, it's going to be an absolute shit show. If he is really not allowed to run, if the Supreme Court stabs him in the back, which is a possibility, I think, and he's not allowed to run, that is going to create a huge fissure. You know, that is going to lead to some probably pretty wild stuff. And they're going to be able to claim that all this like nonstop kind of delusional persecution complex that a lot of these extreme reactionaries have. They're going to be able to point to this evidence that it's real, even though, like, as we said, the crimes that Trump is being persecuted for, he's not being persecuted for his political beliefs, but for a very specific reason of trying to overthrow the U.S. government. You know? I mean, as I've been pointing out as well, I think that's one of the dumbest things about the entire, like, Trump's whole post-election sort of tantrum was that none of it was necessary. And if he had just been gracious that one time in his life, had an ounce of humility, and just immediately pivoted back to running for president, he would be in great shape right now to totally destroy Biden. But he's such an arrogant piece of shit that he just couldn't let it go. Yeah, the polls show he's in great shape despite the insurrection. Like, he's far and away the most popular candidate running in the Republican side and is beating Biden in most polls, if I recall. That's what I mean. You're going to say that that the most popular candidate can't run. When other countries do that, Russia, for example, they call them authoritarian. The United States government calls them authoritarian and anti-democratic. Even if someone is, like, prevented from running for totally legitimate reasons, the United States will call them, like, anti-democratic. So they're in a position where that may be what's going on in the next election. And by their own description, it would be an authoritarian, anti-democratic situation. How much longer do you think Trudeau will be around for? I think he's gone in the next election cycle. Whenever that is. If it's like 2 years from now or wherever, if it comes sooner for whatever reason, I think Trudeau's finished. We're probably going to have a Pierre Poilievre government here in Canada at the same time as whatever next extreme reactionary government takes over the United States. It's going to be really bad, actually. I don't even mean to make light of it. I think it really sucks, actually. But it almost feels like it's just this... It's like this iceberg in the distance that we're just headed towards that we can't really do a lot to... I mean, we tried, right? We've tried. We've tried to steer the ship away from the coming iceberg, and it doesn't seem like anything we're doing. We keep trying to grab the controls of the ship, and then the security guards beat the shit out of us, so... What a crazy time. My gosh. Racking my brain trying to think of how literally any kind of somewhat progressive leadership could grab hold in North America, just not seeing anything. That's why, you know, we can and should criticize Bernie for not being good enough. It really did feel like the last shot. You know? Which might have had downstream consequences of empowering other progressive movements. Sorry, huge sirens going by. I mean, who would be the possible challenger in the United States government? I mean, it seems like, first of all, you need the whole, like, the squad. You need that strategy, but for the entire Democratic Party in Congress and the Senate. You need, like, an actual majority of Democrats holding those views. You need them to then, like, not be corrupted at all by the power structures that they're doing entryism into. And then maybe you have someone like a AOC. But what's AOC? We've, like, what are they going to do? What's she going to do? Is she going to be maybe slightly more economic populist Obama? That's probably the best. That's probably the best you can possibly hope for in terms of, like, the actual system such as it exists now. Excuse me. Yeah, well, Dutch, I mean, I really like PSL in terms of their political viewpoint and, like, a lot of the organizing they're doing. It's funny how people are getting mad at them. People are getting mad at like, PSL for, like, they're helping organizing these huge protests. They've built up a real legitimate network in terms of, like, the Answer Coalition and all these media outlets and all these different partners. They're organizing big movements, you know? And people are like, "Oh, they're too tanky. Why are they involved in everything? They're scaring away the normies." Because, of course, when you hold these views, you're supposed to, like, pretend you don't hold them. That's the only way you can ever appeal to people. Rather than just, I don't know, unapologetically holding these views and then talking to people about them and convincing people that you're correct. How do you get moderate Republicans to vote for you with those views? Exactly. I mean, perilous, like, the vision you're playing out about how someone like AOC would probably go a lot farther in terms of, like, economic domestic policy to improve, like, some people's lives. Like, maybe the ideas that were being kicked around at the beginning of the Biden administration, but with an actual effort to implement them rather than just giving up immediately. But would also be doing whatever the military-industrial complex told her to. Just like Obama or anyone else. She's shown repeatedly that she won't actually challenge these kinds of, like, in terms of their foreign policy. Which is really, you know, that's something that matters. I don't know that you would challenge. Yeah, I saw they took the whole Ukraine war section out of the Washington Post homepage, James. It's so over. It's so fucking over. That is about as much hope as you can have. Marginal domestic quality of life improvements with the same geopolitical positions. Pretty much, yeah. 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 Yeah, like an FDR giving us some social benefits to save capitalism from socialism, which is ironically what I think I thought it was a possibility that Biden might be, but Biden couldn't even do that, despite having that that opportunity pretty much dropped right into his lap. And in Canada, it's even more bleak. Like you can sort of envision a possibility where that, even if it might be disappointing, you can sort of envision a possibility where that happened. Like AOC or maybe someone like with that kind of from that tradition takes over and is able to see Perilous. I think you're being a little too generous here. And like the reason that I say that is because of the squishiness that she's shown on these foreign policy issues. I think this is, and in Israel especially, like she's come back to having like a somewhat okay position on this, but overall, time and time again throughout the last 4 years, she's repeatedly, I think, shown this willingness to promote the narratives of the security state. Well, it's not about a limit about what she can do, but more actually just like taking proper positions. Like she voted to fund the Iron Dome, voted present, and then cried about it and stuff like this. She's been like mostly, maybe with a few small disagreements, backing the endless funding of Ukraine and the endless arming of Ukraine. You know? It doesn't seem like there's any kind of foreign policy issue that she won't ultimately come around to. And even just the last 4 years, she's just basically been promoting the Biden administration, hoping that they can get some kind of scraps from them if they play ball. And they've just been repeatedly screwed time and time and time again. So it's not about having power to do anything, but it's just taking a bold stance that defies your party. You know, which she hasn't really been able to do. She's been so conciliatory with the ruling class establishment. Anyway, in Canada, it's even worse. In Canada, you can see or sort of see a possibility of AOC getting to that position here. But, in Canada, there's just nothing though, you know? In Canada, there's just nothing. In Canada, when you talk to left-wing people about possibilities, it's like, oh yeah, maybe in the next election cycle, Jagmeet Singh will step down and we can get Matthew Green leading the NDP, and then a Matthew Green-led NDP will win 20 seats instead of 15. Wouldn't that be cool? That's pretty much the best possible case scenario. No one actually thinks that they would ever win or that anything good would happen. It's just maybe we could have a slightly more progressive NDP that has a few more seats in our parliament than they do currently, that polls at 23% instead of 17%. That's pretty much all we have. That's all we got here. What do you think Layton's foreign policy would have been like? It would have been identical to Trudeau's. I mean, Jack Layton whipped votes to bomb Libya. That's one of the big things that Nikki Ashton, who's a progressive member of the NDP, took a lot of criticism for voting to bomb Libya. And part of that was because she was whipped by her party to support that. Perilous, I'm kind of curious because I mean I guess you must have patience if you still have hope or optimism for possibilities in this kind of system. Just for me, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just old, but I've just been through now 20 years of seeing people that you think are progressive And oh, if only like the party was more like this person, and if they got into a position of power, then like good things would happen. And you just see time and time and time again these people that you put confidence in and put faith in, and you trust them to do the right thing, and they each and every time, 100% of the time, get molded and corrupted and shaped by the system that they're there to try and like disrupt. So I'm just like, I don't really have any confidence that there's anyone out there right now that's working within this system that's going to be put in the position to actually change anything and follow through on that. Would you despise Superman if he failed to stop a train? Yeah, sure, yeah, because Superman's like an all-powerful god being and has the ability to do that, so if he didn't do it, that means he was choosing not to. You know? Yeah. If you a train of kryptonite. Are you doing a bit right now? Are you doing a bit? Come on now. Is this a bit? Am I falling victim to? Are you all being trolled here? Are you falling victim to a bit? You cannot expect any of these people to succeed. Well, what are we advocating for here? Like, what's this conversation about? I don't understand. If we can't ever expect anything, then why are we even speculating about like what they would or wouldn't do? Man, I don't know. Present on the Iron Dome. Would you still call me Superman? Anyway, I think that's the interesting situation now with this Trump thing. Where I got kind of derailed there. I think that's what the interesting situation with this Trump thing is, you know? He unquestionably did try to kickstart some kind of like reactionary insurrection. And that's the reason, Nick, now, is it in Colorado? The court in Colorado has said that he can't run in the election because he tried to incite an insurrection. Which is true. He did. You know, we can talk about how silly it was all we want, but he did indeed do that. So that's going to probably go to the Supreme Court now, and this is the situation where there's a situation like where there's a election coming up where the most popular candidate may not be able to run because of these, like, the court says he's not allowed to. And despite all this legal consequences and all this legal trouble, there's still millions of people in America that do want him to run and want to vote for him. So it's kind of like this impasse that's coming along where it's like it's kind of inherently anti-democratic to not allow the person that's clearly the most popular, that has this constituency, to run. Even if we might look at the reasons why that's happening and totally agree with them. I think it's kind of an interesting dilemma. And I really don't know what it's going to lead to. I mean, if the Supreme Court decides that he can, what's going to happen? If the Supreme Court decides that he can't, like I was saying, if the ruling class kind of stabs him in the back because he's kind of bad for business. No, it's not just about Colorado. It's like a court that says like he can't run in the election. It's like an official court ruling. And that's just where the case was going through. Right, chat? Like I'm right about this, right? It's like an official court ruling. The case was going through the courts in Colorado. But it says that he can't run in the election. Yeah, it was only an attempted coup. He didn't do anything. We don't punish attempted armed robbery. Well, that's what I mean. Like, who was it? Drippy Shits, valued community member Drippy Shits, says they'll overturn it in a heartbeat. But that's the question: is that, you know, there's definitely people in the ruling class. Even Trump is good for business with them in terms of like the money, making the line go up. He's also bad for business because he's a big sideshow distraction, and often is like either fucking shit up or openly broadcasting all the evil plans of the ruling class to everybody. You know, in terms of like the current conservative ruling class, they would prefer a guy like DeSantis who's going to like, you know, be a little bit more efficient about going about his business. Yeah, that's true, Sean. Layden was had great charisma. American vote talk is the most tedious and fruitless topic I could think of at this very moment. Well, you're right, Old Dutch, but you know what? We got to talk. It's election season. We got to talk about every stupid storyline in this fucking thing, because it's the global hegemon. It's the global hegemon, and whether it's real or kayfabe or what the hell is going to happen, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about the soap opera. It doesn't mean we're going to decline to talk. We're going to decline to talk about anything else, or we're not going to continue to talk about all the other geopolitical and geostrategic narratives that we talk about on the show. But we're going to have to talk about the sideshow as well. They dumped DeSantis for Haley now. The Koch Foundation is backing her. And a lot of the tech guys dumped DeSantis for Vivek Ramaswamy as well. I still find it hard to look at the CBC and see all the folk concerned about young people being radicalized and stuff because they don't support Israel. It's funny how you never hear that in the other direction, right? There's young people being radicalized to support this brutal apartheid ethno-state in the Middle East. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about the young people that are supporting that? And that are like these like drooling Islamophobic fucking lunatics supporting the right of this heavily armed lunatic nuclear apartheid state to enact ethnic cleansing and mass murder. Maybe we should talk about the young people that are being radicalized towards that. It's radical to be against genocide, yeah. It's insane that they're going for Haley. She may as well be drooling on the floor, beating someone at the club. And she, like, no one likes her either. No one has an actual constituency. You know? No one. It's the same thing we saw with the Democratic primary in 2020 when they're trying to audition people. Remember, they're trying to audition Beto O'Rourke. They're trying to audition Kamala. They're trying to audition Pete Buttigieg. They're trying to audition Warren. And they hold it up and they're waiting for the audience reaction. Be like, what about this person? And everyone's just like, no, we hate these people. We fucking hate all these people. It's like, fine, just take Biden, I guess. Just take the old weird stuttering freak. Which makes it even more maddening that Biden sought out a Hillary endorsement. That's true. I want them to campaign together. I want to see it. I still think we might see Hillary running. I maintain that we should all be rooting for that outcome. Vivek said he will drop out if they don't let Trump run and announce while wearing the same jacket as Elon. He won't. The clown show must go on. I think Newsom is very likely. Barry. Am I being sarcastic about HRC? I mean, I'm being sarcastic about liking her as a person or a candidate, but I still think it would be the absolute funniest, most entertaining outcome. So that's the reason that I think it would be good, because that's pretty much all that America can hope for. Until the ground in which she rests is washed away by the sea, there's a non-zero chance of HRC running. Very poetic, Red Star hero. Yeah. They have to, if they wanted to stop her from running, they got to put her in one of those like Hannibal Lecter on the cart, strap her to the cart with the thing on the face. You physically can't. You stop running for president.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to
stop running
for
president.
This.
Thank you for the gifted sub plunger, man. I appreciate it. I'm so over electoral horseshit. Well, I'm over thinking that any of it really matters all that much. I mean, it does and it doesn't. Like I don't think it's going to be good if these like extreme reactionaries fully take over the U.S. government. We can talk about like fundamentally like what's going to be different. A lot of things are going to be the same, but a lot of things could get worse. Like America is never so bad that it can't get worse. I think it might get worse. But like, what are you choosing from now? Like, you're choosing from this extreme reactionary movement or another ever so slightly less cruel reactionary movement. Like, these are the choices. You know? We're all getting a reactionary moron government all over the place all at once, for sure. And Canada's right behind you. Like, we're headed right towards a Pierre Poilievre massive landslide victory. That's where we're going towards in Canada right now, unless some kind of drastic change happens. Let's take a look at some of this Trump stuff. Yeah, in Argentina as well, they're already like clamping down on civil society. Like, Argentina's about to get real bad. I'm not one of these people that thinks that there's this no difference whatsoever between the liberal ruling class and the extreme reactionary ruling class. There is a difference. It's just the liberals are still evil. They're still very, very evil people. I mean, look at the whole immigration thing. You have Donald Trump giving those statements about immigration poisoning the blood of America, using this kind of like Hitlerite blood and soil kind of rhetoric when it comes to immigrants. And then the liberals say, oh, that's so terrible. That's so terrible. Can you believe this guy? And then they're enacting all the exact same immigration policies. They're enacting all the exact same policies. So like, what are we supposed to take away from that? It's literally they're doing the 99% Hitler thing. Like, they're really leaning into it. It's actually incredible. The rumors about a high-level Russian diplomat landing in D.C. today are interesting. I didn't hear those rumors, but that is interesting. We've been reading the tea leaves for a while now about Ukraine and about how they're about ready to finally admit that it's not ever gonna. They're like, all the initial objectives that they claimed that they could achieve by this like nonstop arming of Ukraine are not possible. It seems like you're getting ready for a full admission of that and some kind of like negotiated settlement. You see, another example of that is the whole thing we talked about a few minutes ago with the Washington Post taking away like the Ukraine war subheading. Like, they're really bracing people to make this kind of announcement. The EU just finished their immigration reform, and it's awful, all worse. And of course, in the UK, especially, they're enacting these even more gruesome and barbaric policies. This isn't even like we're enacting these barbaric immigration policies both in Canada, the southern border in the United States, the EU, the UK. And we haven't even really started to see the massive refugee caravans that we're going to see when climate catastrophes start becoming even worse. We haven't even really seen the way that these waves of immigrants that are going to be coming to the West over the next decade. And they're passing these absolutely draconian, barbaric immigration policies now. Like, it's going to get so bad. I actually just try not to even think about it because of how frightening it is to think about. And it's like, all of this stuff, it just seems like we're all headed in this direction, regardless of whether the nice liberals are in charge or the mean reactionaries are in charge. Ultimately, yeah, there are differences, definitely. There are differences between the two. Ultimately, though, it's the same path that's being walked. The same path of decline, like here in the West, regardless of who's holding the reins, who's holding the bag, who's the last left standing up in the game of musical chairs. We're still all on the same decline. And we're about to go over the fucking waterfall. We're about to smash into the iceberg. And whatever party is in charge, it's not going to really change that outcome. And there doesn't really seem to be a possibility for anyone to actually meaningfully do anything to change that outcome. As always, we will only have each other, and that's right. And I don't even mean to be doomer or anyone. I don't think anyone should give up hope or stop working, stop organizing, or stop fighting. I still think it is possible to win, by the way. In case that's not clear, sometimes I sound like pretty grim when we talk about these kinds of things. That doesn't mean I don't think we can win, because I do. But we have to have the correct program, and we have to be internationalists and stop being, squishy on the internationalist front. We got to recognize what side everybody is on. We have to be on the correct side, and we have to work to kind of like manage this decline and maybe prevent our empires from lashing out even more as it continues to collapse. And there's a possibility in that kind of like a collapsing system to really change things. And it's not going to be at the ballot box. That's right. That could possibly be part of the strategy, but that's not where it's going to take place. I still want to win, and I think we can win. Here's the MSNBC. Let's
future of our species is at great risk.
As you can probably tell from me talking
Master
about it,
Chief
I
and the
don't
other
totally...
Spartans are our only hope.
Hello, Master Chief.
Silver team, on me.
Halo show.
Today is the 23rd of November 2023, and Gaza is still under.
We've actually just got some breaking news out of Colorado. We're going to stay with Christy Greenberg and Hugo Lowell to talk about it. The Colorado Supreme Court ruling that Donald Trump has now been disqualified from being on the primary ballot for the GOP. Again, this breaking news out of Colorado. Donald Trump, as we know, was fighting to be able to be on that primary ballot. The Colorado Supreme Court now issuing a 200-something page opinion that we've just got. And we're going to go back to Christy Greenberg and Hugo Lowell. I know, guys, you haven't had a chance to look at it. We're looking at it right now. It's 217 pages. But, Christy, I want to start with you on this particular issue. This is not the first state that there's been an attempt to be able to...
Nick, like you said, confession time between 2009 and 2016 or so. I watched the Rachel Maddow show 55 times a week. If someone could give my friend Nick a subscription, that would be fantastic. If possible. Nick, I think we had really similar like trajectories. Because I was a lot of the same things. I think we bonded over the rally to restore sanity and the Daily Show and this stuff. I used to fucking love Rachel Maddow and Keith Olbermann. I loved that shit. And listen, if you're not as old as like me and Nick, the Bush era was rough. Okay,
You can count on
it was
me.
rough.
You're gonna have good old
It was a
Rob
rough
to
time.
talk you through.
There wasn't
all
a lot
this.
to hold on to. There was no even Bernie movement on the horizon. This all we had was fucking Rachel Maddow and Jon Stewart. Okay, it was really grim. It was a grim time. It was a very bad time. But no, I think we had really similar kind of trajectories, Nick. But But, you know, eventually you have to let go of that, and you have to grow up, and you have to realize the kind of like the ways that as an analysis of anything, it doesn't go nearly far enough, and it actually entrenches a lot of the same horrible systems that are the problem in the first place. Plunge Man, thanks for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. Melissa Harris Perry, she was pretty cool though. I know. In fact, I think she was actually too cool. She lost her job at MSNBC because she was actually like vaguely had principles. So shout out to her.
To disqualify Trump being able to be on the ballot. But what's intriguing about it is that it's now being done in a way where the judicial system is having a say in terms of whether or not somebody can be on a ballot. Your thoughts about what we're hearing coming out of Colorado at this time?
Well, it is an interesting decision because the Colorado district judge, Sarah Wallace, last month when she made her decision,
it was a key thing. That's why I think I respect a lot of people that even I don't think they go far enough. Like we've talked about, like these early like progressive media institutions like TYT, like Sam Sater. I mean, without Sam Sater, like that's how I got introduced to Michael Brooks, and Michael Brooks really helped click a lot of things in place for me and others. Like it's part of one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing right now is because I had this kind of like delusional fantasy about wanting to be that person maybe for another generation of people that are looking for that kind of an analysis, you know, that centers the global South and that talks about these geopolitical situations and talks about socialism, you know? But yeah, that was a really important part of that kind of path, you know?
Had a really puzzling decision where she found, based on the evidence, that Trump had engaged in insurrection, but essentially said, well, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, it doesn't apply to presidents. He's not an officer.
Okay. This is a safe space to admit this.
Such that it applies to him,
Mike.
Which was a really odd result. So when that was appealed, I think a lot of people had been scratching their heads and thought the appeal was appropriate. And, you know, I haven't read the basis of this, but it sounds like at least the Colorado Supreme Court said no. Actually, if he engaged in insurrection, yes, he is an officer, and the 14th Amendment would apply to him. It would be a perverse result otherwise to have it apply to members of Congress and others in lower elected officials and not to the President of the United States. So it sounds like Colorado Supreme Court got it right in finding that this should apply to the president and presumably determines that the factual findings of the district court in finding that he engaged in the insurrection were upheld. So it is a result that is interesting. It is a result that seems like the right result. The big question will be whether or not it holds, because this is surely going to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I have a lot less confidence that the U.S. Supreme Court will decide that Donald Trump should be disqualified from the ballot, given that conservative majority on that court.
I also want to bring in now former federal prosecutor and the host of the podcast Justice Matters, Glenn Kirshner. Glenn, again, I know that this is literally just coming across the wire right now, but I want to bring to our viewers' attention something that's on page 8 of this 200-page opinion. This is what the Colorado Supreme Court has held. 1, Section 3 that Christy was just talking about, Glenn, encompasses, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, let's be clear, encompasses the office of the presidency and someone who has taken an oath as president. On this point, the district court committed reversible error. And so it's cleared up that issue of how can you be the president of the United States and not be deemed to be an officer for purposes of your oath. In addition, Glenn, the district court did not err in concluding that the events at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021 constituted a, quote, insurrection. The district court did not err in concluding that President Trump...
I kind of want to have just like a somewhat understanding of this legal case, because I do think it's interesting, this whole idea of Trump, of the most popular candidate, being legally barred from running. And like I've been saying, even if you can point to very real crimes that took place, it's still inherently kind of like anti-democratic when you have the most popular candidate who has this big constituency of people that want to support them and vote for them being legally barred from running. And I think you can also, again, you can learn lessons about the ruling class and their priorities when we look at the Supreme Court and whether they back this or whether they allow Trump to run. There's kind of something interesting, like a deep political narrative that's going on kind of behind the scenes. So we don't need to get bogged down in every single like breathless detail in MSNBC about this. But I think you can also take a sort of step back and look at these kind of the what's happening inside the ruling class in the West right now. There's still something I find kind of interesting about that.
Engaged in, and that's in quotes, that insurrection through his personal actions. And then President Trump's speech inciting the crowd that breached the U.S. Capitol on January 6th was not protected by the First Amendment. Glenn, we've been talking for days, if not weeks, about this idea of Donald Trump trying to hide behind the First Amendment to be able to give an excuse for what is otherwise going to be clear criminal conduct. Your thoughts about what this Supreme Court kind of ruling has now.
Red Maze, like obviously that's right. Like they don't believe in democracy. I agree. I guess my point is like, regardless of like those kind of views, there's a constituency of millions of people that still view him as the candidate they want to support. And there's a kind of weird sort of contradiction there. And how liberals, especially, who fetishize the kind of like norms and fetishize the idea of like Western style democracy, all these things are kind of like conflicting with one another in this story. You know, they believe in these kinds of institutions then they hate Trump as well, and they believe in these institutions to pass these kinds of laws and rulings, but also they have this fundamental kind of fetishization of Western style democracy. Whereas like where the most popular candidate is being put in jail, it's like it runs totally contrary to all the things that they hold to be sacred about like our form of democracy.
Said as well.
China, it's interesting, Katie, because all along it has felt like anybody with a basic understanding of the English language would read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and conclude that Donald Trump is disqualified from serving in the event a court found that he engaged in insurrection.
And to be clear, too, like you're talking about one who reads like the whole paradox of tolerance. I'm totally supportive of just saying like, no, you're not allowed to run. No, jail. You know? And Trump deserves it. Trump tried to incite an insurrection. I agree. I think it's amazing that he didn't even like we all know like if there was any other like working class movement that came even remotely close to like breaching the Capitol or like in like having some kind of like coup or putsch or whatever, these people would have the book thrown at them right away. They wouldn't still be walking around 3 years later like running for president. So I agree. Jail. Put him in jail. You know, he should have been locked up for a long time ago, probably long before he even ran for president, for basic financial corruption and just being a fucking criminal in and of itself. So I agree. But that's what I mean. Like the liberals don't really believe in this this whole idea of like the tolerance, the paradox of tolerance. You know, they believe fervently in this idea of like, I'll defend to the death your right to say it. This kind of like, you know, even people that we disagree with should be allowed to do and say whatever, except they're, you know, pro-Palestine or they're left wing or whatever. But it's more the way that I think it's like it's creating a sort of contradiction among these sort of the way that these liberals kind of view the world.
What's really interesting now, getting down into the legal weeds a little bit, you know, the Colorado trial court found as a matter of fact, after a trial on the merits, a trial
I don't think it's pointless. It's going to have huge consequences.
Testified, expert
if Trump does get barred from running, whether we think it's good or not, you know, it's going to create this huge fucking reactionary wave. People are going to lose their minds. You know, I think it does matter.
Witnesses who were at the Capitol that day found as a matter of fact that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection. And the reason that's so important as the case works its way through the appellate system now is factual findings like that are
the hogs are going to run wild.
Great
absolutely. Like that's not like, oh, this is all just theater.
Because only the trial court judge gets to see the witnesses.
And that's what I mean. I think the liberals, as much as they hate Trump, I think they're going to be kind of pressured to like support him continuing to run because they know these things. That's what I mean about this contradiction that's kind of emerging here.
As they testify, assesses their demeanor and reaches factual findings. So the fact that the trial court judge, in the estimation of the Colorado Supreme Court, got the legal conclusion wrong, and the Colorado Supreme Court basically reviewed that de novo from jump and reached a different conclusion. That's one thing. But the fact that we have these factual findings from a trial court should, frankly, continue to win the day up through the appellate court system, up to and including the Supreme Court.
Yeah, when he reads, I agree with you, but that's
as long as
that's what American liberals are going to have to grapple with, I think. And that's what I find kind of interesting about this moment and seeing how it develops.
Those factual findings are supported by evidence of record, and they were, this is going to be a real danger zone now moving forward for Donald Trump.
I also think Obama and George Bush and all their advisors, I think they should be in jail as well. I think it's important to say. Trump did try to incite an insurrection. Trump's engaged in a whole lot of criminality and illegal behavior and should be in jail. But yes, so should every single other previous American president also, we should mention. Certainly both Clintons should be locked up. The Obamas, all the Bushes, one of them's dead, I guess. Throw Jeb in there anyways. He's done some bad stuff. That's been another thing about this whole Trump thing that I also find interesting to interrogate, like the crimes that are wind up being punished when you're like a powerful person with sway in the United States economy or the United States government versus like what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to get away with when you're civil, when you work within these norms, when you work within these structures and institutions, you can get away with literal murder. Look what Biden's getting away with right now. Like, look at the crimes of Trump and the crimes of Biden. Trump's an awful reactionary person. He does have this movement of like anti-democratic brown shirts ready to back him here. Are the crimes of Trump like comparable to or more significant than the crimes of Biden, who's subsidizing a genocide right now in Gaza? Like, I don't know. Not really. Biden's probably done a lot more worse stuff. Biden was enthusiastically whipped support for the Iraq war as well 20 years ago. It's not just the last 4 years. Like Biden has a whole legacy of imperialism and criminality. So it's interesting, like what crimes get talked about and what lead to court cases and actual consequences, and which massive crimes are just like totally like look at Kissinger just died, and Kissinger's like was going to parties and sitting on boards of companies and being a consultant, till he fucking died. One of the most horrifying war criminals of the last century. So these are all interesting questions about this. That's why I don't think it's useless to talk about or fixate on.
He has come up with a new secret investment that has made hundreds of people very wealthy.
The absolute truth, last week he appeared in public and announced his
in
new
2010
project,
for sure Obama would jail the
according
Bush
to him,
administration for blame in Iraq and so on. The first thing they did was say no. Jailed none of the criminals in the Bush administration or any of the criminals on Wall Street that destroyed the U.S. economy and millions of homeowners' lives and financial security. Let me be clear. We must look forward, not backward. Yeah, exactly. That's the liberal mantra. And then Obama, and you wonder why, because then Obama goes on to commit a number of horrific crimes himself.
Can turn anyone into a millionaire in 3 to 4 months without any difficulties or major investments.
The entrepreneur and inventor urged everyone to take advantage of this amazing opportunity. And of course,
is this like a fake AI thing? This is so funny. This is legal.
Government officials called asking not to air it, but it was already too late.
So let's hear what Elon
This
Musk
is so
himself has to
disturbing
say
that this
about
is like
I'll tell you
on
about that.
YouTube.
So
I wasn't paying attention, and I thought what we were looking at was like part of the news thing that we were looking at, and it's a robot making Jake Tapper say things that he never said to sell some kind of shitty like AI product. That's good, I think. That's a good sign of where we're going, probably. Anyway, as much as we were talking about why I do think it's important to talk about this, this is very boring, this segment, and I don't really care, so we don't really need to continue watching it. Yeah, that was a real ad. That was a real ad. Very strange. Yeah, but these are all interesting questions and interesting kind of points of analysis about this whole situation. As always, if we're gonna get caught up with the sideshow American politics stuff, I think it's worthwhile kind of interrogating like what it means about the kind of declining empire, what we can learn or understand about the interests of the ruling class that's kind of like upholding all these institutions. I think these are interesting things to talk about. If parents can't tell fake stuff anymore and haven't been able to for a couple of years, I mean, imagine like your 75 or 80-year-old gam or whatever getting sent a clip that's like someone that they like from TV just being like, hey, you really need to purchase this product right now. Give us your social security number because we're going to help you get this really important product that's going to really improve like all the, and it looks at your web history to know all the things of the medical issues or whatever that you're dealing with or financial issues. And they're just going to be like, where is it? Where's my credit card? Where is it? Get it out. Get it out. I would like to. Magnum PI says, sign over your house. It's me. Hello, Bertha. It's me, Magnum PI. You just get out the deed to your house now and sign it over to this like demonic conglomerate that wrote this program. Where's my credit card? Honey, where did we put the deed to the house? Fuck. I can't wait till we replace Rob with an AI. It's not far away, I don't think. I don't think it's that far away. Eventually I can just retire. I can just put AI Rob in charge and I can just lie down on the sofa there while AI Rob does all the hard work. Then he can say all the things that advertisers enjoy. That's right. This is, I would like to talk more about what's happening with the Houthis and, the Red Sea and this now American operation to protect shipping interests in that region. Like, this is a whole other access that this thing is expanding into a regional war. Like, is this another like World War III domino falling right now? The Houthis and these attacking these shipping lanes and trying to blockade Israel right now, and like the American reaction. It always happens on a fucking boat, doesn't it? It always happens with the aircraft carrier, right? The whole Operation Northwoods thing. Remember the Cole or the Gulf of Tonkin, or remember the Maine, or the USS Cole was Al Qaeda in the late 90s. It's always one of these goddamn boats. Maybe this is going to be the next domino to fall. It's always a boat. This is what I'm talking about. Don't forget Speed 2. How could I ever forget Speed 2? Actually, I don't believe I've ever seen Speed 2. I loved Speed so much, but I never even saw the sequel. So here's the full highlights of Ansar Allah leader Abdul Malik al-Houthis speech. So this is in a reaction to
There's a new effort in motion to protect vital shipping lanes from the Arabian Seas to the Suez Canal. The reason? A group called the Houthi continued to attack cargo ships in retaliation for Israel's war against Hamas. Secretary of Defense Austin met with sailors stationed in the country of Bahrain and thanked them for carrying on with the effort.
You're here to keep the international sea lanes open and to keep global
always
commerce
in service of capital
flowing freely.
More than 15% of all global trade goes through the Arabian Sea towards the Red Sea. Canada, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom are some of the countries who agreed to protect the cargo ships.
I chose Wix for my business because of its massive scope for functionality and freedom of creation.
Now, shipping companies are bracing for weeks of disruption to their normal
routes after
several of them announced they would avoid passing through the Red Sea. This follows multiple attacks on shipping by Yemen-based Houthi rebels. The United States has revealed it's considering designating the Houthis as a terrorist group. The National Security Council has said the issue is now under review. Here's our business reporter, David
which is
Waddell.
exactly why they have
These
have
attacks
a sense of
have had a
solidarity
huge
with people in
impact.
Gaza. They've been going
Here's
through
one.
something very similar.
This video by the Houthis shows them
These
storming
videos
a
are so
British
cool.
registered cargo ship last month. In recent days, the escalation of attacks have encouraged a series of shipping
The
companies
Houthis
to
sound pretty
announce they would
based.
suspend
The
their
thing is,
movement.
none of these like Western client states, even like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, like Jordan, none of them are, even though they might use rhetoric or whatever, or in the case of Qatar, they're like funding Al Jazeera and funding media that exposes Israeli crimes. They might have use rhetoric because they have they have populations of people that are disgusted by Israel's actions and want them to take a stand. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, they're not actually doing anything to show solidarity with Palestine, to stop the attacks from happening. The Houthis are actually materially doing things, you know? The Houthis are actually materially putting skin in the game to try and pressure Israel in the West to stop massacring people. And that's something that's pretty incredible, I think.
Through the Red Sea and embark on the much longer passage around the southern tip of Africa. That's costing time and money and a huge impact on carbon emissions. The attacks have been widely denounced. The US, the European Union, NATO and several countries, including Yemen, have issued a joint statement of condemnation. They said there is no justification for these attacks, which affect many countries beyond
We're going to be asked to condemn the Houthis soon as well.
And they called on all
yeah,
states
now they really
to
care about the
refrain
carbon
from
emissions.
facilitation or encouragement
we were just
of the
about
Houthis.
we were just about to cut those goddamn carbon emissions if it weren't for those damn Houthis. You know? No, you're gonna have to condemn the Houthis. You're gonna have to condemn Hezbollah as well. If Israel expands the war into Lebanon, also, you're gonna have to condemn all this stuff before you ever even do anything. You know, if you're gonna get a job interview, you're getting a cup of coffee in the morning. There's gonna be a little list of all the different terrorist groups that you're gonna have to condemn. I know evoking carbon emissions is very funny. Now they're very concerned about this. They're so concerned about the carbon emissions.
The US National Security Council is now reviewing the status of the Houthi rebels, with mounting concerns about the impact on the global economy.
These companies obviously have to make their own decisions based
this
on
man
the
is just
safety and
pure
security of
evil.
their vessels and their
This
crews,
is one
and
of
we
those Oliver
respect
Stone
that.
guys with
But
the
I
black
think it's
eyes.
just too soon to know what kind of impact it's actually going to have on the global economy. That's why
He puts on the human eyes for his press conferences. He goes all black as soon as he leaves.
Coalition and trying to flesh it out and be able to counter
John
these threats
Kirby.
so that transit through the Red Sea can be safer and more secure than it is right now.
Worse and more evil
The
than any
Houthis
Bush
say
guy,
the international
like Ari
coalition
Fleischer or
formed
whoever.
to protect shipping through the Red Sea is an integral part of aggression against the Palestinian people, Gaza and the Arab and Islamic nations.
David Waddell there. Well, I discussed what's at stake with Joshua Mahoney. He's Chief Market Analyst at Scope Markets. I asked him for his thoughts on the supply chain challenge that has escalated in recent days.
Ultimately, we're looking at something that is the biggest disruption since that 2021 crisis where we saw the Ever Given stuck sideways in the Suez Canal. Yeah. Everyone at the time remembers it and sort of remembers the impact on global trade, but certainly that lasted 1 week, and looking forward now, we're looking at a perspective for a long, drawn-out problem that really faces very little in terms of easy solutions. You do have the potential for this sort of 10-strong coalition to move into the area, and that has provided some respite in terms of market fears. We did see oil prices come off a little bit off of that, but certainly I think there's going to be problems in trying to enact that, and until we see that area created into a sort of safe zone, you're going to see these continued long-haul journeys around the south of Africa, and that's going to impact the supply of everything from grains to oils to cars, and certainly that provides the basis for a difficult environment for people around the world when it comes to the possibility for greater inflation. That's going to be a big worry for the markets.
Well, I was just looking at some of the detail here, because I've got statistics here. It says the price to ship a container now from China to the Mediterranean has gone up by 44% in December. And we know that shipping prices have been high anyway, unusually high since the pandemic, coming down obviously in recent months. But still, it was a real issue for many big retailers, the cost of shipping stuff around. It will get passed on to us all, won't it?
It will. I mean, there's a number of elements to this, of course. This is going to lower the availability of ships. It's going to increase the cost of hiring a ship. If someone has one that they're supposed to be taking up and moving a good within, a week's time, it's probably not going to come in a week, because this adds 7 to 14 days of travel between Asia and Europe. So suddenly they're not going to arrive on time, and this really does back up over time. If you look back to that 2021 crisis, once again, it came at a time when we did have particularly tight supply concerns at that moment. We don't necessarily have that at the moment, so there is some leeway.
Skeleton. I mean, it's the same. It's the same concept as like any kind of labor action or direct action. It's looking at it from purely economic terms is fucked. That's why they're doing it, because they know it's the only thing the West cares about. You got to stop the money machine. That's the only thing that they will ever listen to. You got to stop the money machine.
I would say that gradually this could become more and more of an issue, and certainly if the Houthi rebels are essentially saying they need the Israeli incursion into Gaza to end for them to stop these attacks, then this promises to be a much more drawn-out process compared to what happened in 2021, when they essentially had a number of ships just waiting for it to clear up, and that's when they passed through. This could be a much bigger problem.
Pretty incredible. And who knows how this is going to escalate? Like I was wondering, I don't know if this is going to be another domino, another World War III domino falling. Because now the U.S. and Canada and the other partners are going to start trying to keep the shipping lanes open. And who knows how the Houthis are going to respond. In fact, we can get a sense of that in this speech here. Speech from Ansar Allah leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi. It says, we consider the American step, along with some countries, to form a multinational coalition under the guise of protecting trade in the Red Sea, a hostile step aimed at protecting Israel. Shipping lines are safe for all ships except for ships linked to the Israeli enemy entity or heading to the ports of occupied Palestine. We affirm that Yemen will defend itself in the event that it is exposed to any attack. Any attempt to prevent us from carrying out our religious and humanitarian duty in supporting Palestine will be met with a strict response. For 75 years, the Zionist Israeli enemy has continued its aggression against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, committing the most heinous crimes. Countries that go into war usually declare strategic and military bases as their targets, while the Israeli enemy brazenly declares hospitals as their targets. The Palestinians have the Houthis, and the fucking Israel has Jerry Seinfeld and Deborah Messing, and the guy that wrote the goddamn Borat sequel. Israel targeted the gatherings of displaced people, even in the UN RWA schools, and did not care that they were under the protection of the UN, and it repeatedly targeted them shamelessly. Israel continues its brutality, and when it fails in a field battle, it resorts to indiscriminate bombing of civilians in the Gaza Strip. The Americans are partners with the Zionists in all their crimes from the first moment. They sent their military experts for management and planning and provided them with thousands of destructive bombs. No lies detected so far, by the way. The Americans provided the Zionists with internationally banned weapons, providing them with material support to finance military operations, and sent surveillance drones to give them information. The U.S. threatened all countries in the region. By threatening them, the Americans wanted to provide the Zionists with sufficient conditions to commit massacres in Gaza without objection from anyone. Even with delivery of food and medicine to the Palestinian people in Gaza, nothing enters except after American and Israeli approval. America is another arm of international Zionism to which the American president has boasted and declared his affiliation, and he's acting from that standpoint. The U.S. has transformed its bases in the region to be a support for the Zionists, and all its weapons depots, even those in the Arab countries, have been used to support the Israelis. Every resolution under the title of ceasefire in the UN is objected to by the U.S., who insists on the continuation of killing in Gaza. The British, who were the first to establish the Zionist entity from the beginning, is moving today continuously in support of the Zionist enemy. We also see some European countries support the Zionists, including France, Italy, and Germany, each of which has a dark history and a hideous criminal record. When the Zionist lobby influences Western regimes, it compels them to act as if they've abandoned even liberal values. They move recklessly, devoid of many humanitarian principles, a result of jungle-like policies. The responsibility is immense upon the Islamic world, and it falls on every Muslim's responsibility today. It is the duty of Muslims today to take a serious, practical, and effective stand with a sincere approach to support the Palestinian people. Some Arab countries have severed their ties with Western nations because they spoke out against their behaviors or offended a king, prince, or when they act against another Arab or Muslim country. It supports the West. Countries that act harshly against any Arab or Muslim country we see in a state of complete apathy towards the nation's major issues, such as the oppression of the Palestinian people. These countries have reached the point of being preoccupied with dancing, singing, dog competitions, and very trivial things, ignoring the major massacres in Palestine. Oh man, this is so long. I think we got, I'm going to link this thread because I don't want to read the entire speech. It's going to take 20 minutes to read the rest of it. But there's the thread. And you know, when I was talking before about like doomerism, and how about you can be doomer when you talk about like the possibilities of like using the electoral system in the West to like affect changes that we care about, and that's what seems completely hopeless. And I think it is hopeless. But that doesn't mean that winning is not possible. It doesn't mean that I don't want to win and that I don't think that we can win. And like we're seeing right now how that can work. You know, we're seeing a mass movement around Palestine right now. That's militant. That's totally unapologetic. Any mass movement that happens in the West, mass political movement, has to be internationalist in its focus. And we can see the possibilities of the kind of power that we can have with this like growing mass movement in support of Palestine, and in this growing militant labor movement as well, which we've been tracking. And the growing labor movement also has to be internationalist in its characteristics. And this is where people accuse me of campism and this kind of stuff. Campism to me is just an excuse for people that want to claim to have left-wing values to not take a firm stance against imperialism. That's what I think campism means. But this is the reality. There's two camps. There's the West, there's the rules-based international order, there's the Anglo-American Empire, the Fourth Reich, whatever you want to call it. That's one side. And then there's everyone else. That's the other camp. And I think when we have political movements here in the West, they need to be very clearly on the side of the people. The people are the vast majority of people around the world who are outside of that like Western sphere of influence, who exist on its fringes, who are constantly exploited for the benefit of like Western interests. We have the people, we have the movement, but we have to be really clear about being on the right side in this kind of like shifting geopolitical landscape. And that's how we will win. But we have to be really disciplined and militant in these social movements that are happening in the West right now. And we have to make sure that these struggles are connected with the global struggle against imperialism. It's amazing to see the cope online about Yemen. I'm seeing even more sports Twitter accounts trying to dunk on Yemen. I mean, anyone should be impressed with what Yemen's doing. Yemen has been under a brutal siege for years now, which we've supported. It's up until recently, it was the top humanitarian disaster in the world. And despite dealing with this like absolutely horrendous blockade that they've been undergoing, they're now rallying in support of the next largest humanitarian disaster in Palestine and materially putting skin in the game to try and form solidarity with them. That's really inspiring. And this is what we in our society, we fetishize the underdog stories. We fetishize the David versus Goliath stories. And I don't know how people don't fucking understand, living in this empire, every single time when we're standing on the side of the colonizer, the occupier, we're standing on the side of the people that have everything versus the people that have nothing, time and time and time again, and more people are waking up to it. More people are starting to realize this dynamic, but we fetishize these stories. And then in our like actual world that we live in, when these kinds of situations emerge where there is this like massive disparity in terms of who has the power and the weaponry and the ability to defend themselves, and we have our empire lining up time and time again with the people that have everything versus the people that have nothing. Yemen right now, the actions of the Houthis in the Red Sea are bringing our empire to its knees. Like, look at how the impact that they're having already. That's the ultimate like contradiction at the heart of like the Israeli propaganda is this victimization. We're actually the underdogs, even though anyone around the world can see what the dynamic is and that it's not anything like that. We're the underdogs. We're the victims. And it's like, no, you're not. No one believes this shit anymore. And the people that are still trying to promote this idea are getting so fucking angry that no one cares about what they have to say anymore. This is why they're having this extended tantrum right now. This is interesting too. You have TYT in this segment from 16 hours ago. Are the Iran-backed Houthi rebels outsmarting the U.S. with drones? So you got to make sure that you kind of signal which side your bread is buttered there. Make sure you denounce and try to discredit them by suggesting that they're not acting through their own will and volition, just like Hamas, just like Hezbollah. No, it's all Iran. Iran is pulling the strings there and controlling all these different proxies, completely eliminating the agency of anyone in Yemen or Palestine or Lebanon or wherever else, and assuming that the only reason that they engage in this kind of stuff is because they've got some Iranian benefactor that's controlling and manipulating them.
So who are the Houthis? They began in the 90s as a moderate theological movement of the Zaydis, that's a Shia minority group. Fighting corruption was one of their main aims. The 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq was a turning point. Analysts believe
I don't care either, PM Trio. I don't.
Resistance group with deep
I'm over pretending Iran is this boogeyman that they've been treated as over the last several decades.
Sanaa. That triggered more than 9 years of war between the Saudi-led coalition, which backs the internationally recognized government, and the Houthis, supported by
again,
Iran.
you don't have to like a place like Iran. You can find things that you don't like about like a fundamentalist Islamic government. You know, if you're like a secular, progressive person in the West. Like I said, though, there's different sides to this equation. There's the empire that we live in, and all its rampant corruption and rampant criminality, and there's everyone else around the world.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And right now, Iran is on the side of everyone else around the world that's on the outside of that empire, that's been victimized by that empire, you know? And they might not even have that much in common with one another except being a sort of bulwark against Western hegemony and imperialism. But they deserve our critical support on that front. Iran and China, DPRK, Laos, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. You know, the very different cultures, very different political traditions, economic situations. They're being pushed together, though, because they're representing, especially when they come together, Russia, obviously, when they come together, they're part of the side that's on the outside looking in of this like a nonstop, centuries-long project of Western dominance.
October the 31st, the Houthis entered the war in Gaza, firing drones and missiles at Israel.
Sorry, I forget your alias. Barry, why did they end up with that government? That's another question in and of itself. I'm for that which weakens the empire. That's right, Larry. I mean, it's the same thing from the Kwame Ture quote, you know? If I'm the Imam of Mecca and the devil himself is fighting against Western imperialism, I'm on the side of the devil. It's really easy to understand. Don't trust the imperialists, not even for a moment, right? It's not that hard to understand this dynamic. That which your enemy supports, you must oppose. That which your enemy opposes, you must support. You know? But that's the question. We can have criticisms about the government of Iran, but then you have to also question, or DPRK for that matter, but you have to question the role we played in creating those exact political conditions for those governments to emerge in the first place, you know?
Earlier this month, the Houthis said they would target all ships heading towards Israel. We're joined now by Hussein al-Bukaiti, political analyst aligned with the Houthi movement, and he's joining us live from Sana'a. Very good to have you with us, Mr. Bukaiti. What's your response to this international task force? Are the Houthis worried about attacks by the US and its allies?
Oh, and thank you, to Nace Zero. Sorry. Thanks, Nace Zero, for 15 months tier 1 a couple moments ago. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, they are not worried at all, because when they have taken the decision to target Israeli ship or Israeli-linked ship or any ship from any country going to any port of Israel, they will aware that the United States or Israel might take an action, and they did their action because, as they say, it is in solidarity and it is actually an obligation to do so. That's why, as well, if you see the alliance that the United States now has formed, Yemen has been under attack and blockade for almost 9 years, and many countries in this alliance, they were fully supporting the Saudi backed forces. Sure. And at the end, what happened? The Yemeni army has become stronger. They had actually defeated Saudi Arabia to reach its goal. That's why I'm sure, as Mohammed Abdel Salam today had a statement a few hours ago, he said we will continue our operation against any ship, as they declared before, unless the food and medicine will be allowed into Gaza. And they are well aware that the United States might attack Yemen, but they have said any country that will be involved in attacking Yemen, their ships and oil tanker, and as well this country itself, it will be harmed and it will be attacked. I'm thinking that the United States might be forcing the Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates actually to break the truce that has been
Well, are you
signed
worried that
between,
they might do that? The Saudi Arabia and the
those
United
countries.
Arab Emirates are not part of this task force.
Which is amazing in and of itself.
Are you worried that
also,
they will join the task force? What does that mean for
the
peace
Saudis aren't
between
even joining this
Saudis
task
and the
force.
Houthis?
It's kind of fascinating.
I mean, they were in direct war against Yemen and they couldn't do anything. And when they actually signed this agreement, they were forced because of the attack against Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. We remember that this truce was in Yemen was actually announced after the major attack against Aramco facility in Jeddah. That's why Saudi Arabia and United States at this point, I don't think they want Yemen to target the oil infrastructure because, as you mentioned in your report, that now the oil prices and gas prices has increased, and I believe this is actually why Yemeni have done this latest action, because they know that you can only hurt the West in their pocket, and especially as well Israel by targeting those ships. It has almost closed Eilat port.
Many of the ships that have been targeted have said that they have no links to Israel. How are the Houthis choosing their targets?
I mean, in any ship that come under target, it have a link to Israel. It's not only about being owned by Israel, but maybe as an example, a cargo ship which have thousands of containers on them, they have a stop in their schedule to stop in.
You know,
in some
I'm remembering. So I forget sometimes the name of this operation, but those war games, from several years ago, where they simulated an attack, they simulated a conflict with Iran and got absolutely destroyed, and then had to like change the whole simulation and change all the rules to basically rig it so that they would win the Millennium Challenge. That's right. And part of the reasons they did get destroyed so badly was because there was a strategy on the part of the person that was like role playing as the Iranians to destroy these American boats using like small arms and small boats and dinghies and things like that. So this may be put to the test over the next couple of weeks. We may actually see this, and then I don't know from that point where what happens from there. That's, I think we're in, I don't want to say uncharted waters. That's a little bit too much of a lame pun, but like, I don't know. If we start seeing that kind of stuff in these shipping lanes, then I don't know. Who knows where we're going from there? Find out if we have that refloat technology. That's right. Refloated the boats. That's the only way America can win, is when they fucking cheat.
Of Israel to deliver some of these containers, and some of the ship actually they try as well to switch their GPS, and they don't actually reply to Yemeni request for them to stop. That's why any ship that have link, it will be targeted. And we remember, as an example, the Galaxy Leader that was taken by Yemenis. Israeli has announced, and Netanyahu, they said it have nothing to do with Israel, and this was actually all a lie. If those ships actually have nothing to do with Israel, why Israel now is crying out loud?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The Pentagon was not funded back then. It's been fixed now. Good. That's good. Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it.
This means that they are really affected, and those ships actually they have some kind of ties or some stops that will be in Israel. And I just will mention Muhammad al-Houthi, he a member of the Supreme Court in Sana'a. He has sent as well the same warning. He said that the attack will continue, and that the United States, they will bear full responsibility for any expansion of the war, and countries who will be involved in attacking Yemen, they will be harmed really, really badly.
That is Hussein al-Bukhati, political analyst aligned with the Houthi movement. Thank you for your time.
When was this from? 9 days ago.
So who are...
And kind of interested in that Lavrov interview. Just looking at what else I can put on here. We got this Mearsheimer clip. This might be interesting.
Hi, I'm Steve Clemens, and I have a question. If Israel's war has gone way beyond self-defense to the point of making the Gaza Strip itself completely unlivable, why is the Biden administration supporting it? Let's get to the bottom line. In less than 3 months, Israel has killed nearly 1% of the Palestinian people living in the Gaza Strip. To put that in perspective, 1% of the population of America would be more than 3 million people. That's like wiping out an entire state, like Arkansas or Nevada. And so far, there's just no end in sight. Hundreds of innocent civilians, mostly women and children, are killed by Israeli forces daily. And almost 100% of the people living there are now displaced. That's 100%. They're desperate, they're hungry, they're cold. Israeli and U.S. officials are acting as if the Palestinians should blame themselves because Hamas carried out a surprise attack in October that killed about 1,200 Israeli soldiers and civilians. But when a country wages a war, it usually has a specific outcome that it's looking for. So what's the end game for Israel? Today we're talking with one of America's most influential thinkers, John Mearsheimer, professor of political science at the University of Chicago and author of The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, as well as, most recently, How States Think, the Rationality of Foreign Policy. John, it's terrific to be with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. You wrote a piece this week, Death and Destruction in Gaza, in which you said that we've reached a point where there is simply no meaningful military purpose in Israel's war. Tell us what you meant.
Well, when it comes to what Israel is doing in Gaza, you have to distinguish between going after Hamas and punishing the civilian population. And when we talk about punishing the civilian population, we're talking about killing, murdering huge numbers of civilians, displacing them from their home, starving large chunks of the Palestinian population inside Gaza, and so forth and so on. These are basically war crimes. I don't think there are many people who would dispute that Israel has what we call the right to go after Hamas. Hamas attacked Israel. Israel's going after Hamas. That's not really a contested issue for the most part. But what the Israelis are doing is they're going far beyond going after Hamas. And they are inflicting
even media organizations that are trying to still define this as the Israeli-Hamas war are doing such a disservice.
This should be unacceptable to decent people all over the world.
It's very clearly not a war against Hamas. It's a war against Palestinian children primarily.
Not only sanctioning this, but supporting it. It's very important to understand that the Israelis could not conduct this punishment campaign without support from the United States. They need American military weaponry, and furthermore, they need American diplomatic support, and we are giving that to them. So we are as deeply involved in this disaster, this humanitarian disaster, as the Israelis themselves are.
Do you find that there's a worry that America's on the wrong side of this?
No, I think there's widespread support inside the American body politic for the Palestinian civilian population. I mean, I don't think there's any question that lots of people think that what the Israelis are doing to the civilian population is deeply wrong. There's no question there. A lot of people won't voice their opinion on this issue publicly, and that's in large part because they fear that the Israel lobby will target them and that will do damage to their career. There's all sorts of evidence that people on college and university campuses are self-censoring for fear of the Israel lobby. But even there, it's clear that there's just widespread support for the Palestinian people and widespread criticism of what Israel's doing.
It's so loud.
What would you be advising President Biden early on in this conflict if you were trying to advise him or the Israelis how to respond after October 7th?
Well, I think in the beginning, Biden should have gone to great lengths to tell the Israelis to make sure that they executed a measured response and that they did not overreact. And he should have made it clear that he would support the Israelis against Hamas. I mean, he had no choice there for sure, but he also should have made it clear to the Israelis that if they went after the civilian population the way they are going after the civilian population,
I'll be right back, folks.
The United States would go to great lengths to throttle Israel's attempts to murder huge numbers of civilians. That's what he should have done. We should be on the other side of the divide with regard to this campaign, this bombing campaign that the Israelis are waging against the Palestinian civilians. And by the way, it's not just a bombing campaign. The Israelis are trying to starve large numbers of Palestinians to death. They've made that very clear. It's not like I'm making this up. The Israelis themselves say that this is exactly what they're doing. If you look at what the Israelis are saying about the Palestinians, how they describe
you can count on me.
Palestinians,
You're going to have a good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And so forth and so on. And then you listen to what they're saying when they talk about what they intend to do to Gaza. You know, they talk about flattening, leveling it, eradicating it. You see very clearly that they are purposely targeting the civilian population, and they are doing massive amounts of killing.
John, if killing 1% of the population, so many innocent people, isn't a red line for the neighborhood, for Egypt, for Jordan, for other nations around there, for the United States, are we all just in a performance act right now saying, Israel, please don't harm civilians, please limit what you're doing, but we're just helpless and just watching a horrible scene just unfold with no real leverage?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. I mean, just to talk about the United States, we have the potential to bring this bombing campaign to an end. We have huge potential leverage over Israel. There's no question about it. But it's almost impossible for any president, including President Biden, obviously, to use any of that leverage. And the end result is we can say that we hope Israel will limit this campaign and do everything it can to minimize civilian casualties, but we don't do anything concrete, or at least we haven't done anything concrete up to this point to prevent the Israelis from killing large numbers of civilians. And by the way, it's not just the Americans. The Europeans are doing nothing themselves. The Germans and the British, their behavior is especially egregious on this front. But even in the Arab world, you don't see the elites in the Arab world doing very much to put an end to this. And in fact, there's all sorts of evidence that in the Arab world, it's pressure from below that is largely motivating the elites to criticize what the Israelis are doing. And it's a tragic situation. And it is quite remarkable in the year 2023 that the Israelis are able to get away with this.
What do you think Israel wants, if not a two-state solution?
Oh, it's very clear to me what Israel wants. And we're talking here about the government. They want to ethnically cleanse Gaza, and they want to ethnically cleanse the West Bank. The problem that the Israelis face, Steve, is that inside Greater Israel, and Greater Israel includes Gaza, the West Bank, and Green Line Israel, there are approximately 7.3 million Palestinians, and there are approximately 7.3 million Jews. So you have rough equality in the number of Jews and Palestinians inside Greater Israel. And that means you can't have a democratic state. And if you don't want a two-state solution, then what are you going to do? Well, up to now, the answer is quite clear. Israel has turned into an apartheid state. It is an apartheid state. And the Israelis understand that over the long term, this is probably not viable. We all know what happened to South Africa. Can Israel exist over the long term as an apartheid state? And you want to remember that groups like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, B'Tselem, and so forth and so on have labeled Israel as an apartheid state. So they want to get out of that situation. And the best way to do that, from their point of view, is to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, much like they ethnically cleansed large parts of Green Line Israel in 1948, and much the way they cleansed large parts of the West Bank in 1967. The problem is that they have not been able to do that. And the United States, much to its credit, has at least said that it will not countenance Israel ethnically cleansing Gaza. But we'll see what happens there. The Israelis are punishing the civilian population in Gaza, in large part, in my opinion, to drive them out. But they have not been successful so far.
I want to play for you, John, a clip of Danny Danon, Israel's former ambassador to the United Nations in 2019, and something he said about what's behind Israel's goals.
Hello everyone, welcome to this live lesson of our training and fine-tuning LLMs course.
Listen.
I had never tried Takis before. I'm not even really much of like a crunchy, salty snack guy anyways. I don't eat a lot of chips. Really the only chips that I like to get are like the kind of kettle cooked, like Miss Vicky's kind. I like those. These were given to me as a gift. Because I guess it's more of an American thing. I don't know if we can get these there or not. In Canada. I don't really like them. You know? I don't really like them. I'm making my way through this bag. Sometimes you're watching TV or a movie or whatever. You want to just have a little crunchy snack to crunchy, salty, spicy snack to munch on. Leap Lord says the fajita one's no good. To me, it's not about I don't mind the spicy flavor on the outside. What I don't think I like the corn snack thing. Like it's the corn snack underneath that I don't really like. I like the spicy outside. But I don't like Fritos or what other variations there are of corn, you know? Corn, you just turn corn into a salty, crunchy kind of snack. I just don't really like it. I'm just broken. I like some corn snacks, mine just not Takis especially. I'm just not into it. I'm still eating it. I don't even really like Doritos. Try the Takis Spice Nuts. Why don't you try these Takis? No, I'm not gonna do that. Really, really disappointed in this line you're taking. I'm sorry, St. Lotus. It's just look, I'm still fucking eating them. Like, Jesus Christ, I'm not disrespecting it or anything. I'm literally eating them right now. Season 1 to 3 was beverages. Season 4 is all going to be about the salty snacks. What kind of kettle cooked flavor do you go for? I like the original. I like that. What I really like though are those Miss Vicky's. It's black pepper and lime. Kettle cooked chips. Tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Probably one of the best chips. That's really good. Want to be my Western destabilization salesman? You don't even like corn, the food of South America. The thing is, I like corn. I like corn on the cob. I like that cool like Mexican corn street food snack. I like creamed corn. I like a lot of variations of corn. I just don't really like these kinds of salty corn snacks. Salty, crunchy corn chips and that kind of stuff. I'm not into those. Maybe I would like these if it was like a nacho cheese flavor. I'd be willing to try it, definitely. I would be willing to try it, but ultimately I find the kind of corn crunch underneath a little bit unpleasant. Like if you were a potato running dog. I did not realize this was going to be so controversial. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chad. I didn't realize it. Maybe I did. I don't know. Maybe on some level I'm a sicko. I'm a potatoist rotor. I'm a potato campist. Again, I am still eating the Takis. Like, give me some plain nachos with cheese or ground beef or guacamole, sour cream, salsa, pickled jalapenos. Put some corn on there by all means. That's wonderful. Throw some corn on there. I would be happy to. Now this is happening. Look at this. Look at this shit.
This is a deed to our land.
He's holding up the Bible, basically the Old Testament, to say this is the deed to our lands in the United Nations. And I'm just asking you as sort of an analyst to say, if that's what we're working with, and America is allied with that, how does this ever get to a different point than just an ongoing, horrible, convulsive ulcer?
It doesn't. I mean, this is where we are. And by the way, if you look at the demographics inside of Israel, the people who are most likely to make the argument that was just made, that, you know, the Bible is Israel's deed to owning all of Greater Israel, the people who are most likely to make that argument are the ultra-Orthodox. And the ultra-Orthodox now form about 13% of Israel's population. But over time, their numbers are going to increase greatly up to the point where in about the year 2050, you're going to have about 30% of Israel, close to 1/3 of Israel will be ultra-Orthodox. And that's because the birth rate among ultra-Orthodox women is so high. This means that the argument that Danny Danone was just making is going to become heard more widely in Israel. It's not only going to be people like him, it's going to be more and more ultra-Orthodox Jews making that argument. So this argument's simply not going away.
Let me ask you about responsibility to protect, because right now in Washington, we have a couple of things tied together. American support of Ukraine in the Russia war, a lot of...
This is also what I mean, what I was talking about yesterday when we talked about like Bill Maher and these like big atheist guys all being like Zionists and supporting Israel. Like we talked about it, there's like a secular Zionists were the part of the responsible for founding Israel in the first place. But I do think it's like undeniable now that all the people that are running Israel are like holding up, you know, their holy texts and these Jewish traditions and sacred traditions and using this as justification for their actions. Regardless of the fact that there has been this strain of secular Zionism as long as Israel has existed. The people that are running the country now are holding up these religious tales as a way to justify what they're doing. And you have all these like cool, hip, liberal atheists like Bill Maher bending over backwards to support it. I do find it's really hypocritical from someone who claims to kind of debunk this kind of religious hokum or whatever it is, whatever Bill Maher does, you know? And then they're supporting this like religious Jewish ethno-state and its perpetual ability to commit genocide because of this link to the land that they have, which is apparently outlined in a book from thousands of years ago. Yeah, and some people are atheists to just be openly Islamophobic. Exactly. Like that's pretty much what the extent the atheism leaves the body of people like Bill Maher as soon as they have to take a stand against Israel. Remember, Iran's the real threat, though.
Those on the progressive side of the foreign policy, we're talking about R2P, the responsibility to protect, as one of the animators of American
anti-religion when it's brown people or evangelical.
Where are they
that's right.
with regards to the Israel-Gaza conflict and the responsibility to protect Palestinians?
I hear remarkably little from them. There are all these people who have been talking for years now about the importance of R2P, the importance
I think we understand
of
what you
protecting
mean,
human
Raven.
rights, and you would expect
no one thinks
all
you're
of
referring
them
to all Jewish
be
people.
Loudly
No one
proclaiming
thinks
that what the Israelis are doing is unacceptable and that the United States has a moral responsibility to put an end to all of this killing of civilians, of Palestinians. But you hear very little from these human rights proponents and from human rights groups inside the United States. The silence is actually quite amazing.
You know, when I watch polls and what's going on, it's very clear that younger generation Democrats, particularly Democrats of color, but it's really broad swath of younger voters in the Democratic Party, are very, very frustrated with Joe Biden's position.
So Raven, Automod held a message from Raven Payne 87 says, I figured, but it's always better safe than sorry. I don't want someone thinking I hate all Jewish people. I just hate the state of Israel. And now Automod's forcing me to allow the phrase, I hate all Jewish people in order to let that comment go through. And now I feel a little uncomfortable clicking the button that says, yes, allow the phrase, I hate all Jewish people to be permitted in your chat. But Raven, we get it. We get where you're coming from.
On Israel-Gaza, and you see a collapse in their support. And when you interview them and do focus groups right now, they say there's nothing that's going to bring them to support Joe Biden.
There's a more general problem at play here, and that is that Israel has lots of support among people your age and my age. But once you begin to go down and look at younger cohorts, it's a very different story. There's a Harris-Harvard poll that came out very recently that says that if you look at people between the ages of 18 and 24, you survey them, and you ask them this question: was Hamas justified in killing Israeli citizens on October 7th? We're not talking about killing the military. We're talking about killing civilians. In other words, was Hamas justified in what it did on October 7th? 51% of people in the United States between the ages of 18 and 24 say that Hamas was justified. This is stunning. And then if you look at people between the ages of 25 and 34, 48% say that Hamas was justified in what it did on October 7th. So you see that Israel has a real problem. And of course, this problem manifests itself on college campuses. And that's why the lobby is working overtime now to try to shut down criticism of Israel at universities and colleges.
That's great ropes indeed.
His last interview, Henry Kissinger did with Axel Springer CEO Matthias Döpfner. Kissinger said that the problem societies like the United States and Germany had was letting in so many refugees, so many people from other groups, because they then become agents for those other groups, for those other identities.
Elon Musk was saying the other day as well.
And it just seemed to me one of the most remarkable, inhumane comments.
We destabilized the whole world, but then we made a big mistake allowing all these refugees to come in and change our society. Well, stop destabilizing the whole world then, you dumb fuck, Henry.
Pluralistic societies right now.
Jesus Christ.
And whether or not we're trying to wrestle that decency out of ourselves.
I cannot believe I'm...
Well, I would come at this from a slightly different perspective. I don't like the Kissinger argument about bringing people from different ethnic backgrounds or different countries into the United States. The United States is an immigrant culture. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I have no problem with bringing immigrants into the United States. I think it's what's made bringing immigrants into the United States in huge numbers in the 19th century is what made this country great, and it's what will keep this country powerful into the future. So I have no problem with immigration. The issue for me is how to think about realist behavior versus moral behavior when you think about how a state should act in the international system. And I fully understand that states have a deep-seated interest in security competition for the purposes of maximizing their chances of surviving. And I fully understand that states sometimes do
who's lobbying to change U.S. policy in favor of another state's interests again? That's right. Is it immigrants?
Reasons, okay? But at the same time, there has to be
what influence do these immigrant groups have on U.S. policy?
Underpins how states behave towards other states. And as long as there are no sort of strategic reasons or realist reasons for behaving ruthlessly, states should go to great lengths to act in a moral way. I have no problem making that argument. And I think in the case of what's going on inside of Gaza, there is no strategic reason for Israel to destroy Palestinian society, to kill huge numbers of civilians. It just doesn't make good strategic sense. And I believe it is morally wrong. So this is why I am so deeply opposed to it. I think there's no question that Israel has the right, I use that word loosely, it has the right to go after Hamas. Hamas attacked Israel. Israel can go after Hamas, and I understand.
By that logic, though, Hamas
Israel
has the right.
After Hamas,
like this is where John, with his kind of like empire simp stuff, I think gets off the rails. I mean, that's if you using that exact same logic, he just showed a few moments ago that people, like especially young people, support the right of groups like Hamas to attack Israel. So it's like if Israel has that right to go after Hamas and kill thousands of civilians in the process, by that same logic, then these extremist groups would have the right to go after Israel, even if civilians get harmed in the process as well. And yeah, there's the whole case ropes into Eden. You're absolutely right. As an occupier, as a colonizer, do you have the right to defend yourself against the people that you're colonizing and occupying and committing ethnic cleansing against.
Collateral damage. Civilians are going to be killed. This happens in wartime. It is regrettable, but it is a basic fact of life. But it's very different than purposely targeting civilians for the purposes of inflicting massive pain and punishment on them. And again, this has no strategic logic. There's no sort of realist reason for doing this. And therefore, I think it's deeply wrong.
Do you see any chance at all America will, in any time, close to now, turn off that tap?
It's a rare occasion when the United States puts coercive leverage on Israel, especially when it comes to
urging
dealing
restraint
with the
behind the
Palestinians.
scenes, though.
And that's because any government, including the Biden administration, understands full well that if we are to get rough with the Israelis, or we were to get rough with the Israelis, the Israel lobby would come after the administration hammer and tong. And the administration doesn't want that, especially since we're moving into an election year.
Are we going to be complicit, do you think, in the possibility of equations that are, in fact, ethnic cleansing?
Well, there's not a growing clamor. I mean, there's no question that this is a powerful motive on the right inside of Israel and inside of the United States. The United States has made it clear, the U.S. government, the Biden administration, has made it clear that that's unacceptable. The question is, what happens if the Israelis just do it? One could argue that, we're marching towards the point where there may be massive ethnic cleansing. If this bombing continues and the Israelis continue to prevent
all the people that have moved out of the north,
water and food and medicine from coming into Gaza in large enough amounts, it could be that the Palestinians begin to move out of Gaza, and that the Israelis do everything they can to facilitate that. Just hard to say how this plays out moving forward. But the Israelis could just do it and just ignore what the Biden administration is saying about what is it that is not acceptable. So
the crank left, the tankies get it right every time, Ropes.
And as I said to you before, you want to understand that the Israelis basically have two choices.
The tankies are right always.
Whether to continue
when it comes to these
operating
situations
as an apartheid state and to continue keeping Gaza as basically a giant open air prison, or to ethnically cleanse Gaza and the West Bank at the same time, if they can. Now, they would definitely prefer to do that. And the administration has said you can't do that. But again, how that plays itself out remains to be seen.
Well, the Biden administration keeps trying to say that it wants the ground war to end by year's end. I don't see that happening. I see this as a story we're going to be having to continue to focus on for some time. John, I hope you'll come back and keep sharing your perspectives as this evolves. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor John Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on the show.
So what's the bottom line? Israel's forces have destroyed more than 100,000 buildings in Gaza. That's on top of the killing of thousands of women and children, innocents, and it implies a different objective in this war.
Yeah, ropes into Eden. It's weird. It's very weird and coincidental that the biggest anti-Corbyn freaks during 2015 and 19 are the biggest supporters of Israel genocide. It's almost as if these accusations and this about Corbyn and the Corbyn movement and this anti-Semitism panic was always just about Corbyn's stance on supporting Palestinians, and that's all that it ever had anything to do with. Sometimes it feels like that. I don't know. I don't know if you have the same feeling as well. I'm sorry, but telling a population of refugees to leave their homes or be bombed, much less everything else Israel does, is by definition ethnic cleansing. I mean, look at northern Gaza right now. There's no one living. Like, it looks like an atom bomb went off. Where did the people that were just living there a few months ago go? He spoke in my city the other day. We gave him an honorary Scousers for Palestine shirt. He loved it. You know what I've been saying for a while, Ropes into Eden, is that I should get Jeremy Corbyn to come on this goddamn show that you're watching right now. I would like to think that I could swing that. I think this is something I should try. I'm going to try in the new year to get the absolute boy himself to come onto this program. This is one of my New Year's projects.
According to at least one Israeli cabinet official, the emphasis is on quote-unquote damage, not accuracy. This conflict, the babies buried in the rubble of collapsed apartment buildings, the destruction of bakeries that provide bread, the parading of captured Palestinian men in underwear, all of it is going to be seared into the minds of not only Palestinian victims, but all of us. There's no moral high ground here. There's no sense that innocent Palestinian people matter in any equation. They were a burden and a nuisance in the eyes of many in Israel, particularly settlers, before October 7th. They're looked at as inhuman. The U.S. government is complicit in the horrors we are seeing. It's just nonsensical. It's an Orwellian circle where America thinks it can both be seen as a legitimate ally of Palestine's interests while it sits coldly on the side of Israel's untempered war machine that only cares about damage. And that's, sadly, the bottom line.
Name one country that's done more to protect people in Gaza than the United States. Remember John Kirby said that the other day? How do you say that and just not have your head explode like in Scanners, you know? Just out of pure embarrassment. Like, I don't get it. I don't know how you could actually stand there and say that. It's honestly incredible to me that someone could go out there using their own name and their own identity and make this case to people, like unironically. Blinken said it again today. Good Lord. Absolutely insane. Yeah, we've been talking about what Yemen's been doing. Yeah, it's really incredible. It's really, really incredible. Okay, we got Rania Kalik has something today that seems really pertinent. We could do that, or I can leave it to the community. Should we do Rania, or should we do more of the lobby? What do we think? Because that lobby documentary has been very interesting. And I should let people know as well that if you can, subscribe to TRRS. Going on 2 hours and 22 minutes into the stream here. I got about another hour. If you can, please subscribe. I'm at 5 out of 35 subs for the day. As you know, I must make the number go up. I must make the line go up. It's the only way that I'm able to do this stream. If you can,
we simply
please subscribe.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Fart. Yep. Thank you, Bleep Lord, for that. I appreciate that. And anyone else who wants to, please subscribe to this channel. $5 a month. It's totally free of charge with your Amazon Prime account. You can convert to a Twitch Prime sub very easily. You can gift subscriptions to rocket right to the very tippy top of the friendship triangle system. That's Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. A number of ways that you can help out this program. Every little bit helps. It's the only way that I'm able to keep doing this each and every day is if people support the program, and I'm very, very fortunate to have such an amazing, generous community that supports the work that I do on here and allows me to do this show. So if you can, please subscribe to TRRS. And that's the pitch.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Perilous, for the gifted sub. And thank you, Bleep Lord, for gifting a sub as well. I'm not disappointed, Katrina. No, not at all. Honestly, the community around this show, the chat, the viewers, the listeners, so unbelievably generous. You know? That's something that I never lose sight of. I never take that for granted. But that comes into conflict with just the daily reality that I must do everything in my power to make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up. That's all. That's all. You know, so sometimes that leads to some weird kind of moments. Prybar says, if someone gifts me a sub, I'll gift a 5-pack. I don't understand the math or the economics of that, but that seems like an interesting proposition.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Anon, for the gifted sub to Prybars. I spilled a cup of coffee about 20 minutes ago all over my setup and thought I lost sound. Oh, no. Oh, no. That's no good. Rob was like, when I was a kid, my mom would refuse to use the words, I'm disappointed in you, to tell me that she was disappointed in me. No, not true at all. Not true at all. I absolutely love this community. I really do. I love clocking in here each and every day and doing this show and hanging out with each and every one of you and chatting, arguing, hooting, hollering. But the numbers got to go up. The line's got to go up. You know, there's it's just the fundamental reality, the whole thing. It just has to. It just has to. There's the back scratcher. I would never even dream of threatening anybody in this community with any kind of physical violence. Not only would that be immoral and wrong, but it would be against Twitch's terms of service. So it's not something that I'm about to do. What if it didn't has to? Well, that'd be wonderful. Honestly, that would be.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Prybars, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Again, I don't totally understand how the math of that worked out, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I really appreciate that. Prybars, thank you very, very much for the 5 gifted subs. That's very kind of you. Okay, let's see here.
Wix is your platform to perform on.
There is going to be so much armed resistance to Israel's ground occupation of Gaza. I don't think people in Washington appreciate the extent to which the people of Gaza believe in armed resistance. They are not going to accept an Israeli ground occupation. And we have seen from the fighting on the part of Hamas militants and also other groups in Gaza that are engaged in armed resistance, they have killed a pretty high number of Israelis and taken out many Israeli tanks. I don't know. Maybe you know the answer to this. I don't. I see what the IDF puts out as the numbers.
Yeah,
I have to assume that the numbers put out by the IDF are a lot lower than the actual numbers. But the bottom line is if Israel thinks that it's going to just do a permanent ground occupation of Gaza Well, there are going to be many Israelis who come home in body bags or come home disabled, dismembered. And this could be a situation similar to what we saw in Lebanon in 2000, where the Israeli leadership essentially determined that the costs of this occupation, which were in the form of a very high casualty account, would not outweigh the benefits of occupying the land, and eventually have to pull out from a position of weakness.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Kalik, and this is Dispatches. The Palestinian operation on October 7 is said to have killed normalization efforts between Israel and neighboring states for at least a generation, while putting the issue of Israeli settler colonialism and Palestinian resistance back at the center of the region. October 7th and Israel's genocidal war since will be remembered as a cataclysmic event that disrupted the status quo and prompted a geopolitical reshuffling, not only in the Middle East, but beyond. So, what does the war in Gaza mean for the Arab states? Do their responses even matter? Or is it all just symbolic? How about for the future of the Abraham Accords and other normalization efforts? Why haven't the Gulf states used their oil wealth as leverage to pressure the U.S. to make Israel stop?
Imagine Rania
How does the
yelling
genocide
at
in
you? That'd be
Gaza
so- I
impact
would hate
countries
that.
like Jordan and Syria? How is it affecting America's standing
be
in the
awful.
world? What does it mean for Russia and China in an emerging multipolar world?
I would
To
just be like,
discuss
"Listen,
this
I will
and
do
other
whatever you
regional
say. Just
developments,
please stop.
I'm joined by Giorgio
Just please
Cafiero,
stop
the CEO of Gulf State Analytics, a Washington, D.C. based geopolitical risk consultancy. But before we jump into it, this is just part of this episode. The full interview is available to Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthrough news. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Giorgio, welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on, and there's so much I want to talk to you about. Let's jump right into it and start with the Abraham Accords. Because, this was the big accomplishment of the Trump administration. The Biden administration kept up with it and then was hoping to add to it by negotiating some sort of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But, it's said that October 7th and then Israel's response to it has killed normalization for at least a generation. Do you agree with that assessment? And what do you think this means for the viability of the Abraham Accords?
Well, I definitely think that at this point, there's absolutely no reason to expect any more Arab countries to formally enter the Abraham Accords. In light of what's going on in Gaza right now, it would be pretty much political suicide for any Arab leader under current circumstances.
How close they were getting to normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, for example.
The question, though, is what about the countries that did enter the Abraham Accords back in 2020? Would any of them abrogate their normalization agreements with Israel? I think that's possible, but I don't expect that to happen, at least when we're talking about the UAE. I think it could be argued that UAE-Israel normalization was an irreversible event in history. The Emirati leadership has been pretty clear that they want to see the country move ahead in this normalization path. The Emiratis see so many benefits to normalization. It has done a lot to improve their standing in Washington. It brings Israeli tourists into the UAE. It opens up opportunities for intelligence sharing, investment, commerce, trade, technology, so on and so forth. They don't want to tear up the Abraham Accords because of what's going on in Gaza or the West Bank right now. But the UAE is in a difficult position, though, because in the region, there is a lot of rage against Israel, and people do not want to see Arab governments, go down the normalization path and essentially try to bury the Palestinian issue. In the region, the widespread view is that the Palestinian issue needs to be settled in a manner in which there is some justice and there can be lasting peace. The Abraham Accords was premised on the idea that the Palestinian issue could be buried. That, again, that's not what Arabs in the region want. So the UAE has to contend with public opinion and regional opinion on one side, but on the other, they want to continue the normalized relationship with Israel. So it puts Abu Dhabi in certainly an awkward position. This is not a comfortable time for officials in Abu Dhabi. I think they would like to see this conflict just sort of blow over and then we move on. But, that's not going to happen anytime soon. But I'm pretty sure that the UAE is going to stay inside the Abraham Accords. And a final point I'll make is that Abu Dhabi always seeks to present itself as a trend setter in the Middle East. We saw this when it came to Syria. The UAE was one of the first countries that previously had problems with Assad, who renormalized relations with Damascus, and that sort of led to many other Arab states following down that path as well. And then when it came to normalization, the idea was UAE was going to normalize with Israel, and then many other Arab states would follow in Abu Dhabi's footsteps. So for the UAE to abrogate the Abraham Accords would be kind of a way of saying that they were wrong to normalize with Israel in the first place. I don't think we can expect that from Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, I mean, the criticism I've heard in Lebanon, at least from many people, is that, what's the, is that the Emirates, okay, fine, they benefit from the Abraham Accords, but they've actually been supportive of Israel, more so than other Gulf states. And I think it shocked a lot of people. Maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe that's a naive view. We all know that the Emirates, they hate Hamas. They don't like the Muslim Brotherhood, and anything associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, the Emirates very strongly opposes. And also, it's not as though the Emirates were ever some leader of the Palestinian cause or pretended to be in any way. And, Saudi Arabia has at least historically claimed to be very much a part of the Palestinian cause. I don't think you can really say the same for the Emirates. You can correct me if I'm wrong there. But more than that, I think something that was always funny about these normalization deals is that they were always happening with countries. They were calling them peace deals. And it was always happening with countries that Israel was never at war with. It's just a bizarre way to frame basically business arrangement, essentially, between two countries that have never been at war as a peace deal. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that before we move to a different topic.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Sudan was involved in hostilities with Israel in some of the previous wars. So I think that could have been called a peace deal. But you're absolutely right. When it came to UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, they were never confrontational players in the Arab-Israeli conflict. And it's better to describe those as diplomatic deals rather than peace deals. A few more points, though, about the UAE. I think it's important to clarify that when I say UAE here, I'm really talking about Abu Dhabi. There are 7 different emirates in the country. Abu Dhabi is where the political power is concentrated. The UAE's foreign policy is decided in Abu Dhabi. But in some of the other emirates, even Dubai and others, there are different perspectives from those royal families on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And Abu Dhabi's view of Israel and Palestine is certainly not aligned with all of the other emirates in the UAE. I think it's important to note, as you brought up, the leadership in Abu Dhabi hates Hamas. And this is consistent with Abu Dhabi's view of basically any sort of group or movement that in any way whatsoever is affiliated with political Islam being by definition a terrorist organization. Whether it's appropriate to call Hamas the Palestinian offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood or not is maybe a topic for another discussion. But in any event, there are some similarities between Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas's roots have some connections to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. And therefore, from Abu Dhabi's perspective, Hamas is an Islamist group, and the Emiratis do not want to see Islamist groups have any power in the region. This is one of the main reasons why the uprisings of 2011 absolutely terrified UAE. Bring us to the current period. There is an assessment that many people have, and that's that while many Emirati citizens are livid at Israel and very emotional about Palestine, the leadership in Abu Dhabi is frankly quite content to see Israel pound Hamas because of public opinion in the UAE and because of public opinion throughout the wider Arab world.
Central
leadership
and
in
Central
Abu
and South
Dhabi
America, Latin America, that have taken stronger
but
stances on this than these
this
like
is the
neighboring
view
Arab
that
countries.
many people have, that Mohammed bin Zayed, who
are
himself has
basically
never
Western
really
client
cared
states.
about Palestine, is sort of happy to sit back and watch Israel carry out these military operations against Hamas. But the people of the UAE, the Emiratis themselves, see, we need to go back in history a bit. Before Mohammed bin Zayed rose to power, the UAE had different leadership, which was very pro-Palestinian. And the founder of the UAE made a big deal out of Palestine. And so older Emiratis who grew up during those years, they didn't change their opinion about Palestine just because of the Abraham Accords in 2020. They would like to see their country be in support of the Palestinian struggle. But the UAE is an incredibly authoritarian Arab country, not at all like Lebanon, where there's a lot of room for dialogue and debate, and you have quite a bit of freedom of speech. It's the opposite in the UAE. If you're in the UAE and you speak out against the country's foreign policy, that can be it. People get disappeared for criticizing the leadership in Abu Dhabi. So the Emiratis are not speaking out.
Weird how we don't
They're
get
not openly criticizing the Abraham Accords, but privately they do not like the normalization.
They're disappearing political dissidents for the side of good, though, and the side of democracy and peace.
At what is going on in Gaza right now. But it's a high-tech police state. There's a tremendous amount of wealth, and it's very easy for the government to kind of control the media landscape and to keep people scared from speaking out. So this is what's going on in the UAE. Definitely very different from what's going on in some other Arab countries where you do have some more freedom and the government has to make some more concessions to the public.
It's good when our clients do.
It's so funny when you put it like that, or I should say ironic, maybe not funny, that like there's so many people who
they're authoritarian,
have been propagandized
right.
to view the UAE as this like bastion of like success in the region. Like, oh, if only Lebanon could be like the Emirates. And it's like, actually in Lebanon, you know, it's a poor country because Hezbollah exists here, but you can really say whatever you want. It's a lot freer than people who want to think the UAE is like an extension of, I don't know, America. I guess it kind of is in some ways, because like the UAE just has so much wealth, but it you know, along with all that wealth comes a very authoritarian state. So I want to move on to the issue before we kind of get into some of the details of what's happening in some of these other Arab countries. I want to talk to you a bit about the damage to the U.S. And you wrote about this. In fact, you've written about all of these topics that we're discussing. And I encourage anybody who isn't to follow you on Twitter, to follow your website, which will include in the description of this, because you're quite prolific in all of the work you've produced since this has started. But you know, the Biden administration has placed no red lines on Israel. They've repeatedly said that there are no red lines. And in the region and around the world, everyone's watching these clips of these State Department and White House spokespeople who just kind of seem like robots. They just say the same things over and over again. And Biden and Anthony Blinken, all their statements justifying genocide with the most shocking, racist, and dehumanizing tropes I've ever witnessed. And this is from the country that constantly weaponizes human rights and freedom and democracy to attack its adversaries. So I'm curious, Giorgio, what will this war and the fact that it wouldn't be happening if not for the U.S., what is this war, do you think, doing and is going to do to U.S. standing around the world?
Well, it is important to realize that the backlash is not only taking place in the Arab and Islamic world, but really all over the global South. If you go to South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, you're seeing a big backlash against the United States.
And with good cause.
I would say that prior to October 7th, everyone around the world knew that there were serious elements of hypocrisy to Washington's rhetoric about the so-called rules-based order, human rights, democracy. Everyone knew that the United States never called for any sort of consistent application of international law. So it's not like the U.S. had some sort of pristine image around the world before October 7th. But since this Israeli campaign of genocide in Gaza began in October and has been receiving ironclad support from the Biden administration, the U.S. image has suffered to an extreme degree. I don't think many people in Washington appreciate the extent to which Joe Biden's policies have, I would say, probably irreversibly damaged the U.S. image. It is going to be very, very difficult for U.S. leadership to be taken seriously outside of the West when condemning China for this or that, or condemning Russia for its violations of Ukraine's sovereignty, or condemning Russia for other violations of international law. The U.S. does not have the moral standing to be taken seriously.
No, it's not. It's from
the credibility has completely gone down the drain. And this has happened very quickly.
Okay,
this conflict in Gaza broke out roughly 10 weeks ago. And we're seeing, at least in the Middle East, in the Arab world, the anti-American sentiments, they spiked so quickly once this campaign in Gaza got started. I think this really brings us back to the period of 2003 and 2004 and the immediate aftermath of the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq. It's really remarkable how quickly this anger toward the United States spiked. And it's because in the Arab world, people know that this is not...
It was working at the beginning of the interview, and they must have on their end turned on some different mic or something, so the audio is coming through two sources, and it's creating this kind of reverb effect.
Israel doing something on its own with the U.S. being some uninvolved third party. They know where the support for Israel comes from, where the weapons come from. They see how the votes at the UN Security Council play out with the U.S. using its veto. They see an American hand in all of this carnage in Gaza, and therefore the anger is against the U.S. It's very, very intense right now. I think the Biden administration has no ability whatsoever to read the Arab streets. And I don't think the people who are running U.S. foreign policy at the way top, down in lower levels of the State Department, people definitely understand what's going on. We had some cables come in from U.S. embassies around the region.
It's actually an interesting thought experiment to wonder what Trump would be doing differently in this moment. And Trump would support Israel fully over the 4 years. So I don't want to suggest that he'd be good on this, but in the same way that you saw Reagan criticizing Israel, I wonder if Trump would have the clout to actually take a more forceful stance. I don't know for sure that he would, but I actually think it's worth discussing whether Trump by this point would have taken a more forceful stance against Israel and got them to stop rather than just going into the full-fledged slaughter. He said earlier on October, I was actually very surprised on October 10th or 11th, he criticized Netanyahu. He was at a rally and he was just Bibi Netanyahu, we said Jerusalem would be the capital. No one did more for Israel than Trump. But Bibi Netanyahu was very nasty. Bibi Netanyahu was very nasty. He was making one of those comments. So I don't know. Maybe I really genuinely don't know. I don't want to give Trump too much credit on this. Obviously, that's a good point, Funkhouse. It's easy for him to say that shit when he's not in office. I agree. And he was also surrounded by the advisors that were 100% pro-Israel as well. There'd be a Trump hotel in Gaza by now. He was mad at Netanyahu because he acknowledged Biden's win. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think the likely scenario is that there'd be no real difference. There'd be no real difference, and in fact, maybe even you might even see the difference would be that you don't get these urges for restraint, and you don't get the kind of liberal hand wringing about it. And maybe they would just be even more open and unapologetic about it. Send Kushner down to the West Bank to negotiate. Have this thing locked up in a jiffy.
Explaining how horrible the U.S. policies toward Gaza are playing out, how horribly they're playing out. But when it comes to Biden himself, I don't think he has any idea how much damage he's doing to the U.S. image.
This is all true, though.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's got an idea of a lot of things, but that's a story for another day. I want to move on to the country of Qatar, which I think you were recently at the Doha Forum. There was lots of people there.
It sounds like the video's slowed down. Sometimes we've seen these issues with Breakthrough News where I find that when they just aired and there's like maybe not as much editing going on, I'm going to try and speeding it up a little bit. The bigger question is how the Dems would respond as the party of opposition. They would probably be criticizing Trump for not being murderous enough. If I imagine, they would probably try to carve out some space to the right of the Trump administration from it. Or maybe they would be doing a little bit more hand-wringing about it while still fundamentally supporting the nonstop arming of Israel. There was some willingness when Trump was president to criticize Netanyahu because they were so connected with one another. So maybe there would be a little bit more space on the Democratic side now that they didn't actually have any responsibility for it to have some criticisms or to maybe call for a ceasefire earlier or whatever. But that I don't even know, because a lot of people in the Democratic Party are not only just supporting Israel because it's politically convenient, but because they're true believers. So I don't know if there would be that much of a difference anyways.
Interesting exchanges I saw with some of the panels, but the Qataris have played a pretty crucial role in mediation efforts throughout this genocide in Gaza, specifically when it came to that temporary pause where all the prisoners were swapped. And Qatar often has played that role when it comes to
and pretend diplomacy.
Gaza. They've often also played a rebuilding role in Gaza, though I don't know if that's going to happen this time around. But what does this say, do you think, about Qatar's role in the region and specifically its relationship with Israel? It seems pretty unique. They haven't normalized with Israel. And you did see the Israelis openly threatening to shut down Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is obviously it's a media outlet funded by the Qataris, and the Israelis have even basically hunted and killed the families of Al Jazeera journalists operating out of Gaza. And part of that, I mean, this is just me speculating, but I think part of that is actually attacking the network and attacking Qatar in a way. But either way, at the same time, the Israelis are able to go to the Qataris, for mediation. So anyways, it does seem like a bit of a unique relationship. Can you explain Qatar's role, the importance of their role in this particular war, and that general relationship that they have with Israel?
Yeah, definitely. Let me first maybe explain something that could be useful to maybe seeing how the different GCC states are responding. And then I'll jump into specifically how Qatar is dealing with this crisis. I think you have different categories along a spectrum of GCC states. On one end, you have UAE and Bahrain, which are in the Abraham Accords. These countries back in 2020 formalized full-fledged diplomatic relations with Israel, and they've been pretty open about their partnerships with Israel. The next category would be Saudi Arabia, which never went as far as joining the Abraham Accords, but definitely flirted with doing so, and also has been cooperating with Israel in unofficial capacities quite a bit. Then you have Oman and Qatar, which made it pretty clear that they were not going to join the Abraham Accords under current conditions, but they, over the years, have had unofficial relations with Israel, which have been quite pragmatic. And then on the far end of the spectrum is Kuwait, which has never had any formal or informal relations with Israel and stands very firmly opposed to normalization. So going to Qatar, this is a country that, as you point out, never entered the Abraham Accords. They never formalized diplomatic relations with Israel, but there's been a history of the Qataris maintaining an unofficial relationship with Israel. When Al Jazeera came on during the 1990s, this was Arab satellite network that really broke all the rules, if you will. And one of them was having Israelis come on the network. And so that was something that enabled the Israelis to communicate with a wider audience. And that was very controversial. And many other Arab governments had a problem with Qatar permitting these Israelis to come onto Al Jazeera. Also, in the 1990s, there was an Israeli trade office that opened in Qatar. And some people saw that as sort of a sign of de facto normalization. Then in the 2000s, that was shut down as a response to Israeli brutality against the Palestinians. So that explains kind of a bit of a history of how Qatar and Israel have maintained an unofficial relationship over the years. And I'd also add to that, there's definitely a history of Mossad and the Qatari state engaging each other. That goes back many, many years. At the same time, Qatar, it seems kind of contradictory, but at the same time, Qatar makes the Palestinian issue
I've talked about it a little, Zach. You know, my kids' teachers have been on strike. I know there's a lot of healthcare workers that are on strike in Quebec as well. Quebec has a long, long legacy of labor militancy and strike activity and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely an interesting kind of part of the overall story about the kind of increased labor militancy, you know, throughout the West right now, throughout America and Canada. I'm mostly just kind of seeing how it goes and seeing like whether the demands of both the teachers' unions and these other unions that are striking right now, what kind of impact that it has. But it's totally part of French culture for sure. Yeah. But definitely something that I'm like keeping my eye on and something I'm directly implicated in because of my kids' school as well.
Important pillar of its foreign policy. When speaking before international organizations, the Qatari leadership has always raised the Palestinian issue. The leadership in Doha has been very clear that they will not normalize with Israel until the two-state solution is implemented. And like in the other Gulf countries, there is a decades-old history of a Palestinian presence in Doha. When the Nakba of 1948 took place, many Palestinians came to Doha. Then after 1967, you had another wave of Palestinian refugees coming to Doha. And this has been a very important community in Qatar over the years. Then what's interesting to note is that, so there's this history of Qatar dealing with many Palestinian factions.
And long before rallies protesting Israel, probably the second largest military
administrative control of Gaza in the 2000s.
He's really playing both sides together, so he comes out on top.
With different Palestinian factions. And then in 2006, Qatar began playing sort of a bridging role between Hamas and Israel because of its unofficial relationship with Israel, combined with the street cred that Doha had and its ties with Hamas and other Palestinian factions. Doha was in a position to establish back channels between the US and Israel on one side and Hamas on the other. Then we get to February 2012. As you recall, the political leadership of Hamas was based in Damascus. At that time, they were previously in Jordan, kicked out of Jordan in 1999. Then they moved to Damascus. Then because Hamas did not support the government led by Bashar al-Assad after the Arab Spring erupted, Hamas had its falling out with Damascus. And then at that point, February 2012, the exiled political leadership moved to Cairo in Doha. And the Obama administration requested that Doha take in Hamas's exiled political leadership. So that did a lot to sort of strengthen Qatar's hand as a diplomatic bridge between Hamas and Israel. And we saw in past conflicts, 2014 and also 2021, and I believe also 2022, the ceasefires that got negotiated between Hamas and Israel were mediated by officials in Doha. And the different institutions within the U.S. government have explained that they very much appreciate Qatar's service as sort of a back channel between Israel and the U.S. on one side and Hamas on the other, because the U.S. recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization. Formally, U.S. law prevents American officials from directly speaking to Hamas. So Qatar has been very helpful in terms of creating these back channels. Obviously, in the U.S., you have many neocons who sort of treat Qatar like a sort of the punching bag. Groups like FDD push this narrative about how Qatar is a state sponsor of terrorism because Hamas's political leadership is based in Doha. But this really overlooks the fact that the U.S. government has not only did they request that Hamas go to Doha, they've explained that they really appreciate how Qatar serves as a back channel to Hamas. And over the years, the humanitarian problems in Gaza have been slightly alleviated because of Qatari aid that goes into the besieged enclave. All that aid goes through Israel. And the Israeli government has even explained that they think Qatar's humanitarian role in Gaza has helped keep a lid on things. I know in the context of the current conflict, that's sort of absurd to consider, but that has been what we've heard from Israeli officials in the past. So right now, Qatar's in a position where they are still trying to play this diplomatic role. The brief pause, the humanitarian pause that unfortunately expired not too long ago, that was brokered by the Qataris and the Egyptians. Every day since October 7th, Qatari officials and their Israeli counterparts have been in touch.
Is really
Qatar is very very opposed to what the Israelis have been doing in Gaza. Officials in Doha have made it clear to their counterparts in Washington that there's a huge disagreement between the two countries when it comes to Israel's war in Gaza. But the Qataris maintain that it's necessary for them to continue engaging both Hamas and Israel diplomatically. And they've been very clear that until there's a lasting ceasefire, they're going to push ahead with these efforts.
Well, and that moves us on to another state I wanted to ask you about, and that's Saudi Arabia. You know, Saudi Arabia has had some very strong rhetoric about Israel's war in Gaza and has also led conferences with the other Gulf states. But, you know, so far it does look just like words. But I guess my question is, do those words matter more than just symbolism? And then, you know, the question you'll hear from people who are like very upset about what's happening, which is a lot, is why doesn't Saudi Arabia leverage its oil like it has done in the past to put pressure on the U.S. to get Israel to stop?
Yeah, so as you recall, a few minutes ago, I was saying that there's a widespread understanding in the region that Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi is totally fine to sort of sit back and watch Israel pound Hamas. There, I think to a lesser extent, that could be said about Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. The Saudi government's relationship with Hamas is not as negative as Abu Dhabi's relationship with Hamas. But over the years, the Saudi leadership has seen Hamas as sort of a nefarious actor, one that believes in political Islam, is supported by Iran, so on and so forth. But at the same time, the Saudi leadership can never, ever openly say something like that because of public opinion in the country. The Saudi leadership right now, I think, is trying to play as a delicate balancing act. They're trying to strike. There's a few things they're trying to achieve here. One, they want to really position Saudi Arabia as a leader in the Arab world. We saw on November 11th, the Saudis hosted a joint emergency summit of the Arab League in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. That was an event that brought together representatives and leaders of dozens and dozens of Arab and Islamic countries together to condemn Israel. And Saudi Arabia wants to sort of be a country that can sort of unite the Islamic world at this time. But to your point, though, about this issue of oil leverage, what we saw at the November 11th emergency summit was that there are some pretty big geopolitical divisions in the wider Islamic world that played out at that event. So there were proposals from Algeria and some other countries to take some very concrete action right now that would do a lot to raise the costs for Western countries that are supporting Israel, including the United States. These proposals included leveraging oil, similar to what we saw during the Arab-Israeli War of 1973. Also, an end to normalization agreements between Arab Islamic countries and Israel, and also prohibiting the use of U.S. military bases in these countries for the purpose of arming Israel. Now, the countries that participated at that summit did not unite behind that agenda. And this has to do with the fact that, you know, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE very much depend on the United States. And there's a limit to how far they're going to go in terms of confronting Israel, mindful of their interests in keeping up a good relationship with the United States. And for countries like the UAE, of course, they want to still maintain their normalized relationship with Israel, as we discussed earlier in the show. So that explains why Saudi Arabia, UAE, and some others were not willing to jump on board. But your point is absolutely spot on, that the Saudis do have cards to play. If they wanted to leverage oil to squeeze Israel and its backers in the West, they absolutely could. We saw Mohammed bin Salman stand up against the Biden administration when it came to Saudi-Russia relations, OPEC+. He definitely has had no problem using the energy card to demonstrate the kingdom's autonomy and willingness to tell Washington to take a hike. But when it comes to Israel-Palestine, we're not seeing the Saudi leadership handle the situation that way. What I think a lot of this comes down to is Vision 2030. As your viewers probably know, Vision 2030 is Saudi Arabia's grandiose economic diversification agenda, where they're trying to get the kingdom to stop being dependent on hydrocarbon resources, and they want to develop these non-hydrocarbon sectors in the economy. To do this, the Saudis need to have a lot of stability in the kingdom, stability in the region. They need to bring in a lot of investment, and they certainly see Israel playing a role in Vision 2030. So basically, I think what Saudi Arabia wants is to have an unofficial relationship with Israel once the dust settles in Gaza. They want to have Israeli tech companies contributing to Vision 2030. They want to see this conflict be managed, contained. They don't want to see it spread throughout the region any more than it already has. They don't want this to reignite the crisis in Yemen. They don't want this to lead to a war that Iran gets brought into. They're just really focused on calm in the region. And I think that's sort of how we need to read the Saudi response.
I guess so, but then it does make you wonder, like, what are their red lines? Are there red lines for Saudi Arabia? Or is it just kind of like, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, does Israel wiping out Gaza impact Saudi Arabia's security in any way? Because that's what red lines end up being about.
Well, I think, as I said, it's really the concern about how that could spread. And the Saudis definitely want to see a ceasefire implemented. They want Israel to stop what they're doing, and they find it very disturbing what Israel's doing. But again, it's not, and I'm speaking about the Saudi government here, when it comes to the citizens, I think there's a lot of passion for the Palestinian issue. But when it comes to the government, this is really more about pragmatism and national interests. They're opposed to Israel's behavior in Gaza in large part because it has such destabilizing effects in the region. If this war continues on, unfortunately, I think there's reason to expect that. It'll be interesting to see if Saudi Arabia sort of changes its messaging and maybe its policies. But as I said, they're very terrified about the potential for this conflict to regionalize and internationalize even more than it has at this point.
Well, then just speaking on the issue of red lines, we know that Israel wants to push the Palestinians in Gaza into the Sinai. And so far, Egypt has refused to allow this, despite what looked like some pretty intense lobbying from the U.S. to make it happen, because they view that as a security threat to them. That's their red line, it seems, even as they continue to abide by the U.S. and Israeli siege and won't fully open the Rafah crossing for aid unless they're given the green light to by America and Israel. And then you have Jordan, that also I'm sure has red lines, but so far they haven't been crossed, I guess, because Jordan hasn't. I mean, Jordan's done a couple things, but nothing of like real substance that would really impact the conflict in any way. And you can, I know you've actually written about this, so please feel free to give details on what Jordan has done. But again, it's not anything that would really impact Israel's decisions in Gaza. But we know that the Jordanians are unhappy with and have been unhappy with the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. So I'm curious, how does the genocide in Gaza impact Jordan? And do the Jordanians have any red lines that would cause them to do anything that would actually matter in terms of pushing back against Israel's destructive capacity across Gaza, the West Bank, pretty much everywhere Palestinians live?
It's a great question. You're absolutely right when you point out that for a number of years, Jordan has become increasingly upset with the policies of the Netanyahu government. They, of course, see those policies as a direct threat to stability in Jordan. Since October 7th, there's probably been no Arab government that's used language to condemn Israel as strongly as the rhetoric out of Amman. The Jordanian officials have been very clear that their country will not play any role in terms of facilitating a Nakba 2.0. The view among Jordanian officials and many throughout the region is that Israel's end game is to ethnically cleanse Gaza and push the Palestinians in the besieged enclave into Egypt, and then later do the same with Palestinians in the West Bank, pushing them into Jordan. This is where Jordan's red line is. Any massive influx of Palestinians into the Hashemite kingdom, that could potentially result in Jordan pulling out of the 1994 peace treaty with Israel. But if Israel's behavior goes short of that, I don't think that Jordan would abrogate the 1994 treaty. And this has to do with a few factors. So obviously, among the Jordanian population, many of them are Palestinians, of course, there is a tremendous amount of rage against Israel. It's so strong that the government has permitted protests to be taking place since October 7th. And many have participated in these protests in Jordanian cities all over the country. But the government is, in my opinion, unlikely to pull out of the peace treaty short of that extreme scenario I mentioned, because Jordan very much depends economically on the United States. And if Jordan ceases to be at peace with Israel, the U.S. would probably cut off its aid to Jordan. Given the seriousness of the country's economic problems, that would be a very horrible situation for Jordan. Also, if there were outright hostilities between Israel and Jordan, the Israelis could do a tremendous amount of damage to Jordan to the point where they can make the country simply unlivable. As everyone knows, water scarcity is a huge issue in Jordan, and the and it has been serving to create a lot of political problems and socioeconomic friction inside Jordan. And if there is some sort of a conflict with Israel, all of those tensions could exacerbate to a very extreme degree. The land that can be used for agriculture in Jordan is next to the Israeli border. So any war with Israel could do unspeakable amounts of damage to Jordan's economy and just the ability of people to live inside the country. So to put it simply, Jordan's in a really difficult position right now. They have to weigh multiple interests. I think it's unlikely they pull out of the 1994 peace treaty, but that's not to say that we should dismiss that possibility.
Well, I want to move on to another country that I think has,
I think I'm going to leave it there for now because I'm running low on time and I can't stick around that much longer. But if you want to watch the rest of the video, I just linked it in the chat. Please make sure you watch that. And of course, subscribe to Breakthrough News to support the work that they do there. Here's one thing that I wanted to do that I just came across this tweet. I just came across this tweet and I wanted to just Rob destroyed my 25+ stream streak by streaming on Sunday at 1 a.m. European time. And I'm very upset. I demand to be informed about night streams beforehand from now on. Stream streaks are very important to me. I'm sorry, Relic. It was totally unprompted. Because lately, sometimes I do some gaming stuff. I do little night gaming stuff. And sometimes I decide at the last moment to do that. Anyway, I just wanted to show this tweet. I got a tweet on the screen right now, and I just wanted to take a quick look at it. Okay? And I don't even need to say anything. I'm just going to show it to you. Thank you for your concern about the sanctity of these international shipping routes. It's like, yeah, they're threatening the international shipping routes, and it's cool as hell, actually. It's cool as hell that they're doing that, and we should support that. Oh. It's okay, Diego. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Diego, that's a good question. How did you just automatically know exactly who we were talking about there? Kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm reaching the end of the stream today, folks. I'm reaching the end of the stream. Getting towards the end here. The 4 p.m. The 4 p.m. EPs are indeed setting in. That's true. And as Dr. Maggot's pointing out, it's a measly 22 subs to go to get to the sub goal for today. Barely anything at all a mere, measly, meager, minor 22 subs. If you can, please subscribe. Who could be, we could see a hero step up like Kijiji Genie yesterday was the hero that stepped up. One brave hero that wants to support this community and this channel could almost get us all the way to the sub goal and play the very cool and elite and exclusive alert that goes alongside that. That's exciting. Isn't that exciting? I'm excited. I just don't have the energy to do the big pitch. I just don't. Dakadoon lost his stream streak as well. I'm sorry to hear that. I feel like the gaming stream shouldn't count. The gaming stream shouldn't count as the stream streak. I don't think it should. Sorry, I'm just organizing stuff with my son's birthday party on Friday. While doing this. So stressed out. Honestly, I really hope he has a nice time.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You guys got Chris. He's got a bunch of Christmases coming up. But I just I just kind of want to get this next couple of weeks over with. I'm about ready for this year to just finish up. I'm a little ambivalent about this whole next couple of weeks here. Dr. Maggot, I think I'm good. I think it's okay. Crad Babes, thanks for 18 months of tier 1 and for all the support. Thank you, Crad Babes. It's my birthday tomorrow too. I've half planned a party but haven't really followed through, so don't even know if anyone's coming. Oh no. I hope you have a wonderful birthday, Crad Babes. I hope you have a wonderful birthday. I don't think I am going to click that.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
And Saint Lotus, thank you for the 100 bits. You didn't activate the text-to-speech because it takes 200 bits to activate that, but I'll say 4 PM, just because I do appreciate the 100 bits. I'm getting the EPs. What do you want from me? You want me to talk normally? You want me to talk properly? I have to do a podcast at 10 o'clock tonight, and I'm so tired. So tired. I'm going to have to do a podcast at 10 p.m., and I don't want to. I don't want to do it. If I watch this clip, is anyone going to gift a sub? This is the question. Am I just humiliating myself for people's enjoyments? Reliving my verbal flubs? Or is someone going to actually sub? This is what I want to... This is my question. The 4 p.m... The 4...
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
That's a funny pause face. Very cool clip. Thank you, GMO Radio, for the gifted sub.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Saint Lotus, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. Thank you. Such a cool clip. What a cool clip.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Look at a subscription, Steve. Thanks for 24 months. Tier 1. You did it. Congratulations, Steve. You got 24 months, 2 years. Congratulations to you on the brand new shimmering golden 2-year sub badge. Steve, you've earned it. Thank you for the 24 months. And we got a hype train close. And we're only 18 subs to go. We're only 18 subs to go, and we got a hype train. That's so cool. That's so cool and exciting. I love that. You can tell how low energy I am. Rob's in a mood today. Not really. I'm in a fine mood. I'm just fucking tired. I'm always so tired. I wish that it were not the case. "30 seconds left to get this hype train going, folks. Do we have a sub gifter that's gonna get this hype train rolling? Do you see how hyped I am right now? Let's go. You see how excited I am? I'm hooting and hollering over here.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Dr. Maggot, for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. You should put on sunglasses during the stream to sneak in some naps.
You can count on me. Napper. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I should get glasses with the ping pong balls with the holes, the eye drawn on. That's what I should get. Thank you, Anon, for the gifted sub as well. Only 16 to go. Only 16 little subbies to go. Looking for some music to put on. And we got a hype train, folks. Well, we're level 2. Do we hear level 3? We're 44% of the way through level 2 of this hype train. Can we get to level 3? Do we hear level 3?
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Okay, this is going to get me hyped. This is going to get me hyped, and it's going to get the chat hyped. Comrade Bushy, thanks so much for the gifted sub. Always appreciate the support from Comrade Bushy. We're 64% of the way to level 3 of this hype train. Does anyone else in this community want to come and step to the plate and support this channel? We're 15 subs away. A measly 15 subs. Only a few generous chatters could get us over, could drag my tired ass over the finish line for today. Only 15 subs to go. Oh my goodness, that's so close. It's within reach. It's within grasp. I can taste it. I can touch it. That's right, Dr. Maggot, because I'm serious about this. I'm serious about this shit. Only 15 measly subs to go. Can you believe it? And remember, if you gift 5 subscriptions or more, folks, that makes you automatically, rockets you right to the very tippy top of the friendship triangle system. That's Twitch's only 2-dimensional, triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. You can rocket right up to the very top of that with a gift of 5 subs or more. Certainly that would propel this hype train to the next level, would propel it to a level 3 hype train when we'd all unlock new emotes and bonuses from Twitch. Very, very exciting possibilities on the horizon. And with a mere 15 subs to go, very, very close. And remember, every single subscription allows me, Rob Rousseau, to continue airing this program each and every day for your viewing pleasure or your listening pleasure. And now, coming up on 1 minute left in this hype train, folks, it's 64% of the way through level 2 of this hype train. Who will be the brave and generous chatter that propels us to the next level? Only 1 or 2 gifted subs would do it, and that would get us a little bit closer to the goal. For today, the line could continue to rise, the number could continue to go up. And if you support this channel, you allow me to keep doing this show each and every day. It's very, very helpful, and we become friends. That's right, you and I become official friends. It's non-parasocial, it's a real friendship. That applies to you. Now you have a whole community of different friends that you are connected to after subscribing to this channel and becoming a member of the community. And with only 20 seconds left, I imagine all the subs and donations are being clogged. Once again, the pipes are clogging all the different subs and donations and all the things that people are trying to do to support this channel. And I'm doing this kind of sportscaster voice because it's the NHL 95 theme for Genesis, which is one of the very best sports games of all time. And I'm happy to report that we did have a hype train success. We finished at level 2. Wonderful. Wonderful and thrilling for everyone. Please, everyone, flash your brand new hype train emotes in the chat. Oh, I don't know what that was. I don't know what any of that was. I don't even know where this music's playing from. What's going on? I literally don't know. I can't see in my taskbar where it's coming from. Okay. I was like, I think we're stuck with this. What about this music? I've never heard this before. This is the music from Super Hang-On. Sega Genesis 89. This is the real song. Pretty good. I've got to go. I gotta go pick up my kid from school, do a bunch of parenting, do homework, have dinner, hang out, put him to bed, and then do a podcast for however long that's going to be. They should put cocaine back in Coca-Cola. I would think that would really be beneficial to a lot of people, including me. We should convince right-wingers that it's woke, that having cocaine taken out of Coca-Cola products was wokeness gone out of control. The productivity would skyrocket. We want the line to go up, or don't we? Here's a really cool 8-bit song. I'll bet you know it. Better not be something silly. Oh, cool. Oh shit. I didn't mean to turn that off. What about this one though? This one's really good. Are you ready for this one? Is this worth any subs? Is this anything? Oh yeah, you know what it is, Hinchal. Realize how complex this song is too when you hear it like this. Boys will spend a quarter just to shine the silver bowl. Take its toll. A quarter. I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay. I gotta go. I'm out of here. Fuck this. Thank you everyone for supporting the show. Thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate you all. I really, really do. Thanks for watching. It was fun as usual. We're gonna do it again tomorrow.